Hello and welcome to the Disaster Recovery in the Cloud EcoCast event produced by Actual Tech Media. We are joined by expert presenters from Clear Sky Data, Druva, NetApp, Daydream, Alliant, Offsite Data Sync with Veeam, and Unitrends. My name is David Davis of Actual Tech Media, and I'm excited to be your moderator for today's event. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to join us on this special event. We want this to be an educational event. We hope that you learn a lot about disaster recovery in the cloud, and we hope that you have a lot of fun. If this is your first time on an EcoCast event, you should know that the EcoCast and MegaCast event series were created by Actual Tech Media to help IT professionals learn about the most innovative enterprise-grade technology solutions all in one single online event to get all your questions answered and to have a chance to win one of our very valuable prizes while doing it. Now, before we kick off today's Disaster Recovery in the Cloud EcoCast, you should know a few things about the event. Today, you'll hear from seven of the hottest companies in the space today. Each will speak for roughly 20 minutes, followed by a live 5-minute Q&A session where I'll take the best questions from our audience. That's you. So please keep those questions coming. This event is not a competition between the presenters. There's no winner being selected here today. Again, this is an educational event for you. To ensure that this event remains positive, we've asked each of the presenters to focus on what differentiates their product, what their unique features are, and how they can solve your real-world problems. Before I give a short state of disaster recovery in the cloud presentation to do a little bit of level setting, we first have some housekeeping to cover. Now, we will have some prizes. We've just increased the prize giveaways on today's event. I'll be talking about those more in just a minute, so stay tuned. I'll also be covering the eligibility requirements for those prize drawings. Now, I said I'm going to be taking the best questions from the audience. That means that you need to use that questions and answers box there on your audience console to ask as many questions as you'd like about today's presentations. We'll be trying to answer every one of those questions if possible. If not, I'll save those questions for the presenters to get back to you after the event. I also have some questions for you out there in the audience, so I'll be asking you a number of poll questions. I'll be sharing the results of most of those poll questions with you so you can see how you stack up with your peers. We also want this to be a social event. There's a Twitter widget at the bottom of your console, and if you tweet using that Twitter widget, it will automatically append the hashtag for today's event, which is DREcocast. I'll be monitoring Twitter throughout the event, and I'll be responding to questions and comments over there. Most likely, I'll be following just about anyone who tweets about the events. We thank you in advance for helping to spread the word about what we're doing with the event and all the great things that are happening here on the MegaCast and EcoCast event series. We also have a number of resources for you from today's presenters. You can click on the Handouts tab, which is right next to the Questions and Answers tab there on your audience console, and download all the handouts or click on the links that are provided from today's presenters. So make sure that you check those out. I also want to point out that your console is kind of like a windowed operating system inside the browser. So you can take the windows in there, like the questions and answers box, the slides window, the Twitter widget, and the event schedule that are represented by icons on the bottom of the console. You can take these, you can drag them around, you can resize them, maximize them, however you'd like. In fact, I recommend that you maximize the slides window so that you can see the live demonstrations, videos, and architectural diagrams that will be playing in that slide window during today's event. If at any point you have trouble with the presentation, simply press refresh on your browser. 9 times out of 10, that will resolve any problem that you have. If that doesn't resolve it, you can take the URL for today's presentation, copy it, close your browser window, open an incognito or private browsing window, paste that URL in there, and that will resolve any problem due to browser plugin issues or security restrictions that prevent videos from playing. Now, Chrome is the recommended browser for today's event. If you're having trouble, I encourage you to try out Chrome. And if you have trouble with Chrome, try an incognito browsing session in Chrome. This is a completely live event, and as you know, with live events, things sometimes can and do go wrong, but hopefully today we're going to have a perfect event. Now, we've increased our prize drawings today from 3 Tango gift cards to 4 Tango gift cards. That's $2,000 in prize giveaways being given out on today's event. If you don't know what a Tango gift card is, these are actually better than just giving out an Amazon gift card or an Apple gift card, because the cool thing about Tango gift cards is, one, they never expire, and two, you can convert them into just about any gift card that you want. For example, an Amazon gift card, Apple gift card, Best Buy gift card, favorite restaurants. You can give them to charity. You can do just about anything you want with these Tango gift cards. And that's why we started giving out the Tango gift cards, because the incredible flexibility that they offer to those who win them. Now, to be eligible for the prize drawings, you must be present on the live event. You do have the option to make a donation to a selected charity instead of receiving a gift card. We will reach out to you via email to deliver your gift card after the event, and the full prize details can be found on events.actualtechmedia.com. In fact, if you go to the handouts tab and you scroll to the bottom, you'll find the link to the prize terms and conditions. Now, through the MegaCast and EcoCast event series, we have given out thousands and thousands of dollars to charities, thanks to generous attendees who choose to give their gift card value to our selected charities. So if you'd like to do that, just let us know when we contact you, and we would love to help you donate that prize value to charity. Now, I said we want this to be a social event. The hashtag is DREcocast. If you tweet from the console, that hashtag will be automatically appended. If you use your own Twitter client, please add that hashtag DREcocast. Feel free to follow Actual Tech Media, who has produced today's event. Also, feel free to follow me, David M. Davis. I'll be tweeting about the event over on Twitter while this event is happening live. Actual Tech Media talks about enterprise technology on a variety of different channels outside of the MegaCast and EcoCast event series. Feel free to subscribe to our YouTube channel, our Facebook page, and the 10 on Tech podcast that's available in the iTunes store. Now, before I introduce our first presenter, I want to talk for a moment about disaster recovery and the cloud, and how disaster recovery can be made so much easier thanks to the benefits offered by the public cloud. I mean, it's a scary time right now for you as an IT professional and for your company's data. We have massively growing data, both on our own personal device, your mobile phone, your laptop, your desktop. The data is growing exponentially, but this is compounded in our company's IT infrastructure with hundreds or thousands of employees. I haven't talked to one IT professional who isn't struggling with a massively growing data set. To complicate that, data is being distributed across mobile devices and across software as a service applications and multiple cloud providers. It's hard to know exactly where our company's data is anymore. At the same time, that data is being attacked from multiple directions, from our end user devices, from our company's internet connection, via email. And as soon as that data is compromised, it's being sold on the open market and being held for ransom. One of the stats that I saw recently is that cybercrime damage costs are set to hit $6 trillion annually by the year 2021. And at the same time, global ransomware damage costs are predicted to exceed $11.5 billion annually this year. I mean, these are some scary statistics. And at the same time, we in IT are trying to figure out how to put all the pieces together of our disaster recovery and our data protection solutions. I mean, we've got backup and recovery, we've got replication, we've got disaster recovery, failover and fail back. We have multiple storage solutions. We might have one or multiple cloud providers, software as a service applications, our end user devices. How are we going to protect all of this data in all of these different places with multiple different solutions? How are all these things going to fit together? And how can we ensure that we can reliably recover, that we can do it quickly, efficiently, and that it's going to work every time? And oh yeah, what about the cost for all these different solutions, both on an ongoing basis and when we have a disaster? There are so many different pieces of this puzzle. But here's how I believe the cloud can help you with disaster recovery. First off, unlike a traditional co-location solution that you might rent and put your own infrastructure in there and replicate your data over to, with the public cloud, you have utility or consumption-based pricing. So you only use what you consume. and this can be very beneficial for disaster recovery. The cloud is also infinitely scalable, unlike some sort of mirrored infrastructure that you might create on your own. The cloud is also elastic, so you can scale up your consumption, you can scale it back down, and you only pay for what you use. With most of the solutions you'll hear about today, they have a disaster recovery on demand solution already created. We have pre-built disaster recovery solutions available on the event today that you'll learn about that can help you to automate disaster recovery and ultimately make disaster recovery easy, affordable, and efficient for you and your company. With so many different data protection and disaster recovery solutions available for you today, I think this is going to be a really great event for you to help you learn about multiple solutions, some really innovative solutions, all in a single event. So you'll hear from ClearSky, Druva, NetApp, Daydream, Alliant, Offsite Data Sync with Veeam, and Unitrends all on today's event. And with that, let's get started.
All right, before I introduce our first presenter, I've got a few poll questions for you out there in the audience. The first question is on the screen here. It says, how many people work at your company? I'll just leave that up, and I'll be sharing the results of this poll question with you so you can see how you stack up with your peers who are on today's event. All right, looks like the votes are coming in. Let's get a few more responses from the audience. Thank you. We've got hundreds of people on today's event from around the world. Thank you for all the comments that are coming in, all the hellos, the good mornings. It's great to hear that everyone's out there and where you're from. All right, let me share the results of this question with you. And looks like 20% are at small companies, 21% are at 100 to 500 employee companies, all the way up to 9% at 10,000 plus employee companies, 11% at 5,000 to 999. So real good distribution of companies on the event today. The next poll question here is, what's your industry vertical? And for this one, you may need to scroll down using the bar on the right-hand side of the slide window to see all the different verticals. As you can imagine, there's a lot of different verticals out there in the world today. We've tried to represent all of them. If you don't find your vertical in there, there is an other at the very bottom of the list. All right, let's get a few more responses in here. We appreciate those. It's going to be interesting. I always find this question interesting to see where everyone is from and who's interested in disaster recovery from these specific verticals. All right, so far it looks like manufacturing, outside of technology, looks like manufacturing. Oh, healthcare. Healthcare just peaked up. All right, let me share the results of this one with you. Okay, it looks like 13% are from healthcare, 29% technology, 5% real estate, 11% manufacturing, 4% insurance, 5% retail, 6% finance and banking, and then a real good distribution of higher education, state and federal government, local, K-12 education. If you add all those up there, that's over 10%. So thank you everyone who voted in that poll. I've got one more poll question, the last poll question here for you before we jump into our first presentation, and that is, what's your time frame for updating your existing or selecting new data protection and disaster recovery solutions? So I assume if you're on this event today, you are interested in disaster recovery solutions, and so we're curious to find out what's your time frame for implementing something or updating what you have. All right, looks like most everyone has voted. I appreciate that. And now it's time to kick off today's DR in the Cloud EcoCast event. I'm excited to introduce our first presenter, that is Mr. Darren Miller. He is the Senior Manager of Engineering, Performance, and Tests at ClearSky. Darren, are you with us?
I am. Thanks, David.
Thanks for being on. Take it away.
All right. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the EcoCast today. We're going to talk about Data, which is a hybrid cloud solution. We're essentially a storage service, and we were founded in 2014 on the premise to build and deliver a storage service that manages the entire data lifecycle of your data that's ingested into the system. So the service itself is a storage-based service, but it combines backup, disaster recovery, durable copy of the customer's data, and it takes advantages of the economics of the cloud for scalability and so on. Now, we're headquartered in Boston, Mass, but we have various metro presences in New York, DC, Chicago, Dallas, San Francisco, and we're continuing to build out our ecosphere, so to speak, in terms of distributing capabilities throughout the United States, as well as globally. We have a number of customers that range from various institutions and verticals, from healthcare to financial to technology and nonprofits, and kind of sprinkled all over the place in terms of our customer base. And we have some particular strategic alliances with Amazon and Google, Equinix, and for those of you that don't know who Equinix is, they're a provider of essentially the connectivity that we require for our infrastructure, as well as we're partners with Akamai. The founders are Ellen Rubin and Laz Vakaridis. And without further ado, let's go into a little bit about what we're doing here. So again, primary storage, we include offsite backup and disaster recovery in the solution. We also are highly integrated with backup applications in terms of offering local, offsite, and long-term retention capabilities. And then we have an add-on capability, which is the ClearSky Compute, which essentially is the DR as a service piece. And we partner with third-party partners to essentially host the entire infrastructure from the compute aspect, and they utilize ClearSky on the back end for the storage and the data protection perspective. So really, ClearSky is based on essentially what we call the global data network. And the global data network is this network of infrastructure that allows for endpoint access of the customer data. And what I mean by that essentially is customers can connect into ClearSky and start to ingest their data and run production workloads or backup workloads or whatever it might be. And as data is entered into the system, it's protected automatically and it's secured on the fly immediately as soon as it enters the environment. Once it's in the service, it's accessible any place the customer has an endpoint access. And this could be a local data center, multiple local physical data centers, or it could be a cloud presence in terms of you have some compute up in AWS. We can connect into AWS in terms of placing one of our what we call edge caches up into AWS or Google for that matter, and give you access to both that aspect of your environment as well as the physical presence of your environment. I'll show you a little bit about the architecture and really what that means. So from a customer perspective, as you connect into the ClearSky Global Data Network, you connect in through the device that we call the edge cache. And it's a block device. It offers iSCSI, fiber channel connectivity, as well as file with NFS and SMB. And this would connect into your storage area network just like any other enterprise class storage array would. Once that's done, we handle all the connectivity from the edge cache back to the environment. We basically build these point of presence data centers which we call POPs, and they're a regional based data center. And we do this to for a number of different reasons. One, for performance benefits in terms of if by chance you've ingested a lot of data into the environment, now you're accessing that data and you're running your production workloads, and you have essentially a cache miss. What we call is when you're accessing your data and that particular portion of the data doesn't live in that edge cache. In most cases with hybrid cloud solutions, you're going to end up going straight to the public cloud provider to access that piece of data and then back, which can offer a significant amount of latency in terms of the response time round trip to go and seek that data and then bring it back into your environment. And really what we've done here is we've mitigated that piece. The point of presence data center offers a higher performance in the event that you do have a cache miss, going from 25 to 40 millisecond latencies down to 2 to 5 millisecond latency on a cache miss. We also utilize the public cloud or private cloud, if necessary, as a backing cloud point. And what we do with that is we keep a consistent, durable copy of the customer's data center out in the backing cloud. And that's important in the event that you have a local disaster or a physical disaster. We always have a consistent copy of the customer's data out in that backing cloud. Now, throughout the system, as data is entered and accessed, we have tiering algorithms that work pretty identical to what you would see in an enterprise class storage array, where you have different disk tiers of maybe flash, high-speed spinning disks, slower spinning disks, and so on, and you're tiering the data based on access frequency on the higher performance disks. We're doing pretty much the exact same thing, except on a global scale, where on the edge, we're utilizing all flash and NVMe drives for really high performance data access, and we consider that the hot portion of the data set. Inside the point of presence data center, or the POP, we also have a hot cache as well as a warm cache tier. Now, we utilize that hot and warm cache for having access to that data in the event that there's a cache miss. It's readily accessible and it's available, like I said, within 2 to 5 milliseconds. We also utilize that POP for our DR operations, which I'll get into in just a bit. And then lastly, that backing cloud tier is essentially our cold data repository, and that is the 100% full copy of the customer's data set. In most cases, the point of presence data center will also have a full copy of the customer's data set. It really depends on the size of the customer's data set, but in most cases, they'll still have it. Let's move on to the DR architecture for ClearSky. So very similar slide, just a little bit different in that now we have multiple data centers. As customers entered into this, as data is entered into the system, again, gets placed in the point of presence data center, and then eventually written out to the backing cloud. Now, in the event that there's a disaster, you can access that data that's in the point of presence data center at any point in time. And because that edge cache is a write-through cache, that data that's in that point of presence data center is essentially RPO 0, meaning recovery point 0. There's no loss of data in terms of, a replication schedule or, anything like that. We're not actually replicating any data. Because we're simply just changing the access point from data center 1 to data center 2, all we're doing is telling the storage that, I'm going to access this data set or these volumes from this data center instead of my other data center. And we just change the access point. No data is actually ever moved, and then that data is accessible at another data center. Now, that data center 2 environment, like as I mentioned, it could be physical. It could be a virtual data center or a cloud data center. So we see a number of different use cases for the architecture, both in primary storage and a backup target and so on, as well as offering simplistic DR, and more importantly, easy migration operations from physical to the cloud in terms of your data set and migrating that data to the cloud. That's a challenge today. It takes time. It also takes resources and special software in most cases. In ClearSky's case, you simply stand up your compute in the cloud. We'll populate wherever that cloud provider is with a virtual edge cache, and then you can access your same data up in that cloud the same way you would from your physical data center environment. So I am going to go here. I'm going to try a live demo in the event of in the middle of an EcoCast, but I think it's important because I want to just show you guys really how simple it is and what it takes to run a simple DR operation. So I will start the screen share, and I'm going to move over to the ClearSky interface.
I see it, Darren. Yep.
All right, great. Thank you for that. So similar to what we saw in the slide, this is an environment and it has 2 data centers. Data Center 1 and Data Center 2, both are connected to a point of presence data center here in the middle. And all the data that is entered into the system is pushed out to this back-end cloud environment. As I enter the system, what I see immediately is sort of a dashboard that tells me my storage utilization and I/O tiering, a heat map view here, as well as statistics and so on. I don't have a whole lot of workloads running right now. I didn't have time to get a bunch of workloads staged and running and so on, but really we're dealing with a disaster, so what I figured is most of the workloads are going to be down anyway. So let me show you what it takes to essentially move over your access from Data Center 1 to Data Center 2. So if I drop down into the volumes view, what you're going to see here is I have a whole bunch of different volumes running in this environment, connected to different environments, Windows servers, Linux servers, VMware, and so on. I'm going to initiate a DR action. So we have 2 options in terms of disaster recovery. You can move workloads or volumes, and this is essentially cutting over the access to that existing volume from one data center to another data center. Or you could clone the volume or the environment and make a copy of it and push it out and give that copy access to that other data center. In this case, I'm going to do an actual move operation, and now I'm going to be tasked with choose the data center that I want to move from, and then select the volumes that I want to use for this move operation. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to move just a handful of volumes here. And then I'm going to move them, move the access point from Data Center 1 over to Data Center 2, and then I'm going to give those to a host in my system. So I'll give these volumes access to this host that I have over here in Data Center 2, and then I'll start the operation. It's going to ask me, you sure you want to do this? I'm pretty sure I want to do it because everything's down. It'll go through the operation of changing the access points, and now what you'll see here is these volumes that used to be on Data Center 1 are now on Data Center 2. And more importantly, if I have to, now that things have been running for a while, I want to move these back, right? We all think about the failover, but what about the fail back operation? It's just as challenging. You have to make sure the data is consistent, up to date. You have to get your schedules in place, and then you have to plan the move and failover back. In our case, we would essentially just do the same exact operation, except this time we're going to move from data center 2, and I'm going to pull in a handful of these volumes, click apply, put them back to data center 1, and give them access to a host that I have over in this environment. So that's really it, and that's essentially how it would work from a storage perspective. I'm going to show you a couple of slides that are going to talk about the DR as a service aspect and integration with tools like, VMware. So we have a VASA provider. It looks very similar to other VASA providers that you install on vCenter, and the same thing applies. From a disaster recovery perspective, we have the failover operation, the failback operation, or we could test it, which would essentially create that copy, move the copy over to a second vCenter in a different data center, and then allow me to run through my recovery operations to test those on a regular basis to make sure they work correctly. Because this takes long, because we're moving from one vCenter environment to another vCenter environment, I won't walk through it. I will start it, but I'm not going to stay on here just because it takes a little bit of time. So I have a couple of data centers, data stores here. I can register these VMs up onto the hosts in that other environment. Or a cluster for that matter. So if I have a cluster, this will allow me to view the cluster in that other vCenter environment and then run that failover operation. It'll tell me exactly what I'm going to do here, and then it'll register the VMs that I have on these data stores with the hosts in this cluster. It'll let me know that I'm going to take the volumes offline from this VMware environment and then present them to my other VMware environment. So again, this takes a little bit of time, so I'm not going to walk you through all of this, but what it says basically is we've successfully started this environment, so it's going to run and it'll queue for a while and it'll go through. So that's essentially how the DR process works with ClearSky. And as I mentioned, we partner with a bunch of different partners for hosting and managing the compute side of things if that's a requirement from the customer as well. But really what we're trying to accomplish here is minimizing the data center infrastructure from all of these different typical environments, like you have your primary storage, you have a backup and recovery environment, you have maybe you're archiving to a public cloud. All of this is built and it's being managed by your IT teams, all the software and the licenses and so on that are involved with this. We're trying to mitigate a lot of that complexity and simplify it by offering the service within the hybrid cloud environment, so that from a customer's perspective, there's a lot less that you have to be concerned about in terms of, are my licenses up to date? Are my replication schedules or my backup schedules working correctly, and so on. The data is already protected in the ClearSky environment, and the replication or the DR aspect of things is actually quite simple, as you just saw. So as I mentioned, we have a bunch of customers and a number of different customers and use cases that we're seeing on a day-to-day basis. And I've listed some of them here. Most customers are looking to reduce their overall storage cost. And when I talk about reducing your storage cost, I'm talking about not just your primary storage, but your primary storage, your backup storage, be it disk-to-disk backup or backup to tape, whatever you're using in your environment. Maybe you have an archive to cloud methodology that's running in your data centers. We're talking about all of those as your storage cost reduction. We see a number of customers that are utilizing ClearSky for data center consolidation. So These are large customers. They have lots of different offices and locations, and it's a challenge for them to give all these locations access to the data, that's up to date. So what we've done with these customers essentially is we've placed an edge cache in each of their locations, and they've migrated into the ClearSky Global Data Network so that all of the data is accessible at any time from any of their locations. So the consolidation story is a great one. We see a lot of customers utilizing that. Simplicity, so data access and management simplified rather than running, a large, complex, multi-vendor, multi-software environment. We're seeing a lot of simplistic reduction in terms of what customers are interested in. And then simply cloud adoption. Customers are interested in utilizing the cloud because it's economic, it is scalable, and they're hesitant in a lot of cases because of the notion of latency, and accessing the data out of the cloud to their local data center is challenged and not going to meet their needs from a performance perspective. By utilizing the ClearSky network, we mitigate that issue with our point-of-presence data centers that are throughout the country and offering a higher performance capability for production environments. So again, primary storage, offsite backup and DR, a target for long-term backup and recoveries, and then the disaster recovery aspect that we just saw. Now here's the VMware integration that I just showed you guys. We have a VASA provider, as I mentioned. It installs in vCenter. It is multi-vCenter aware, as well as DR and disaster recovery aware. It could also run just in a single data center and single vCenter environment if that's what the needs are, and so on. And then the DR is a service, as I mentioned, that we utilize partners for the compute piece of that. So again, the partner would provide the ability to spin up the DR environment on demand in the event that there is a disaster. They'll work with you as a customer in terms of building out the environment so that it mimics your production environment and meets the needs that you have for the disaster recovery operation. And then you have the ability to test that a couple of times a year, depending on the provider and the partner that we use. And essentially you have DR as a service on demand when you need it. And with that, I am complete and finished. There's some links on this that haven't really shown up very well, unfortunately. We'll have to fix that next time. But if you visit clearskydata.com, there's a bunch of information there, briefs, white papers, technical docs, and so on that you can do a little homework on, get a little more familiarized with things, and see if it's something that you might be interested in. But before I'm complete, I want to thank everybody. I appreciate you taking the time out of your day to join us on this EcoCast today. And I'll hand it back over to David.
Yeah, great presentation, Darren. Thank you very much. I do have some questions here for you from the audience. I want to point out to the audience, if you click on the slide window right there, those links that Darren has up on the screen, those are actually clickable. I just realized that, or actually it was pointed out to me. You can click on the links that you see there to access the DR on demand with ClearSky Data white paper, to access the brief or the solution brief on there. You can also go to the handouts tab, and there's a ClearSky Data solution brief that you can download as well. So Darren, I've got a few questions for you here. While I ask you those questions, I'm going to pop up this poll for the audience. that says, what additional information would you like to get about the ClearSky data solution? And that's a multi-select question, so you can select as many of those as you would like. So Darren, first question I had here is, in the ClearSky data solution, would it replace, say, like an aging SAN or NAS that someone has, maybe it's coming up on lease or the maintenance needs to be renewed and it's a lot of money to do that? Could ClearSky come in and replace that? Would that make sense?
Yeah, in fact, that's where we see a lot of opportunity from a customer's perspective, and the sales team's been very successful there. Really, customers they have large institutions or even small institutions, and their equipment and hardware is starting to age out. So they're faced with the decision whether or not to, sign up again for another support cycle and install an upgraded piece of hardware for their storage environment. That means a migration in most cases of the data sets to that new environment, and it's a challenge for them to do so. It takes a lot of time, in most cases, and the vendor will usually help them out in one way, shape, or form, but they're starting to consider the cloud as an option, and we would typically come in and walk them through, okay, well, what has your vendor quoted you in terms of the solution that they would like to upgrade you with, and then we would walk you through with a spreadsheet and itemize all of those different items in a line item perspective, and then compare that to what it would cost to migrate your data into the ClearSky Global Data Network and take advantage of that solution.
Okay, and what's that process typically like, and how long does that take?
The process really is initiated, by the customer, and one of our sales representatives would go out and get an understanding of, what the customer environment looks like today, what the upgrade option would be for that customer, and then one of our sales engineers would come in and start to work with the customer in terms of their needs with a new solution, be it there's no new major requirements, they just need new hardware, or they also are interested in implementing replication or DR in one shape or fashion, as well as they want to install some sort of archive solution, which would be an additional cost if they went with a standard solution. And then they would line item all of those items out, and we would compare that to what our cost structure is at ClearSky. I didn't mention it, but we have a pay-as-you-go model. So you pay for the capacity you use at that particular point in time, and it's billed on a monthly basis, and it's a per gig type billing structure. So if you put in 40 terabytes one month, and the next month you remove 10 terabytes, you would pay for 30 terabytes. And then the month after that, maybe you ingest 15 terabytes more, and now you're up to 45. So it kind of fluctuates with the capacity usage that the customer needs.
Very nice. That's attractive. That makes it easy. A question just came in. What about security concerns of ClearSky holding customer data? What sort of security measures are around that?
I have a security slide. I didn't include it today, but security is usually the top 3 questions that we get from customers on a typical basis, and we have a number of security principles in place and policies in place. The first off is we have an AES 256 encrypted passphrase that is managed by the customer. So when the customer first initializes with the service, they would create a passphrase, and that passphrase encrypts all of the data as soon as it lands on the edge. So from their application servers to that edge cache, as soon as the data lands on the edge cache, it's encrypted with a 256 encrypted passphrase. and it stays encrypted throughout the entire system. It's never decrypted at any point in time until it's read back to the application servers from the edge. All of the infrastructure that's in place is run through private lines. So we use Ethernet private lines from the edge to that point of presence data center. And we use dedicated private internet to private Ethernet from the point of presence data center to our backing cloud environment. Those are managed by us. We use diverse carriers so that if a carrier has an issue, it'll just get picked up by the other carrier that's in that service. And then we also are SOC 2 compliant, so we've gone through the process of getting that compliance certificate, and we perform what we call penetration testing from third parties that specialize in trying to break into secure environments or secure infrastructures. So we do this on a yearly basis, a couple times a year. We hire multiple different companies so that not one company is running the test all the time, and they produce what we call attestation reports. And those are public documents. The customers can view and ask and see those anytime they want to look at our security methodologies and make a determination if they meet their needs. You know, as I mentioned, we have a number of different customers in healthcare and financials, and you know, it was some of our earlier customers in those verticals that actually helped us build our security model. So, you know, we're pretty confident in it, and we think that most customers would be as well.
Very nice, very nice. Well, Darren, that's all the time we have for live questions, but I've got a couple of questions here for you in the queue. One says they would like to have a detailed demo of Clear Sky. It's a really intriguing concept for their data. Another one is asking about industry certifications, and another one about diverse paths. So I'll leave those for you to answer and, you know, perhaps share with the audience. Thank you so much for your presentation today.
Thank you, David, and thanks to everybody that was online.
Awesome. For more information on Clear Sky, of course, visit their website. Also check out the handout that's available for download there in your console. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Tushar Agrawal, Director of Product Management at Daydream. Tushar, are you with us?
I am with you. Hello, all. Good to be here.
Great to have you on. Take it away.
Excellent. Thank you, David, and hello, everyone. As David said, I am Director of Product Management here at Daydream, and Daydream is an upcoming strong company that's focused on software-defined converged infrastructure with a very strong hybrid cloud story. And so I'm going to hopefully give you a good flavor of that in the next 20 minutes. I'm going to structure the first 10 minutes on slides and the last 10 minutes on a live demo where we'll actually do an actual failover so you can see how quick and easy it works, and hopefully it'll work out well. So, looking forward to that. I'm really going to talk about easy and reliable DR orchestration in hybrid cloud. And the reason why, we are so suited for hybrid cloud is because we have developed a file system that works extremely well in your own data center, but also extends extremely well to the public cloud. And when you combine that with a VMware-centric management plane with on-prem and VMware Cloud on AWS, you can truly get an operational, consistent hybrid cloud experience. And I hope to kind of show that to you as I cover the next few slides. So let's kind of step back. And I think you're likely going to see this content maybe from other vendors. This is all referencing industry standard research. But I think a couple of points that I wanted to call out. One is that unplanned outages is still a big problem. And it's not really the equipment failure. That, as you can see, that's about 4% of the cases. It's mostly external factors or human intervention that is causing most of the failures. So UPS is power supply is one of the most common causes of it. You have the accidental human error, fat fingering something, but very interestingly, you have cybercrime. right? And that's really becoming a very important reason why people get unplanned outage. And they need a solution that not only does disaster recovery, but also cybercrime recovery. So as I go through these sections, you'll see that the solution we have can address both the requirements. Now, having said that, most companies are not able to meet their RTO and RPO objectives, and this is based on recent research from Gartner, where about 67% of customers need disaster recovery to be resolved within 4 hours. That's really hard when you have a collection of products such as backup and primary, and the data has to be copied, and that's pretty hard to meet, and I'll kind of talk about that as I go along. And 72% of companies surveyed in 2016 experienced IT downtime in the last 20 months. So it's very common, and it's extremely hard for people to meet their objectives. Why is that? This is a complex slide by design, and so I don't want you guys to read this, but the key reason why DR is so hard is because infrastructure in a data center is still highly siloed, highly fragmented, and it's very hard for a DR orchestration software to be able to work with a variety of vendors, with a variety of server configurations and backup configurations and virtual machine configurations and so on. And if you kind of look at it from a data angle, you really have data copies and file systems changing dramatically between these systems, all of which make it extremely hard to get a clear idea on, are you really DR ready, right? So it's super complex. It makes it hard, and it makes it fragile. But as you look at the things that you need to do to get DR going, you can really see that there are so many steps where this can break down, right? You have to set up your production site, you have to set up your DR site. If it's cloud, then it kind of adds a little bit more complexity to that, because now in most cases you may have your AWS environment or your Azure environment, which looks, feels, smells completely different than your on-premises environment. And so how do you really make all of this work in a simple way so that you can focus on your business objectives as against focusing on getting DR to work when you want it to work? What would it be like if you could really eliminate everything in this square box, right? What if you didn't really have to worry about these separate silos of products, be it the primary, be it the backup, be it the DR software, running it, maintaining it, patching it, so on and so forth? That's what Daydream infrastructure is focused on. So that's what we enable for our customers. We have a software-defined converged infrastructure that first simplifies dramatically and accelerates dramatically your on-premises infrastructure. And we do that by converging primary, backup, DR, and security on one platform. And you'll kind of see more details on that as I go along. But not only that, we also extend those same 4 elements in the public cloud, especially with AWS and VMware Cloud on AWS. And so what you get for the first time is a very consistent VMware to VMware, Daydream to Daydream environment where data mobility is extremely fast because everything is transferred on a deduplicated plane, and where you have the ability to restore data in an instant because it's all consistent across both these environments managed by a single vCenter. And you'll see that in the demo. So what we really enable for customers is easy recovery, where you can simplify your on-prem dramatically, simplify your cloud site or the other target site, be it another DR site, and really get what we call converged recovery, right? Where data moves across one consistent file system, and you get the benefits of speed, you get the benefits of simplicity, of deduplication, compression, of security end-to-end, be it your prem-to-prem DR or be it your prem-to-cloud DR. So how do we do this? We do this via a collection of the converged platform, which is on the very left here, which is DVX. And that's essentially a combination of servers and capacity nodes where we install our software, and you can scale out elastically. Gives you a very high performance platform, probably the fastest platform that's available out there, and no kidding. And at the same time, converged primary backup solution all in one package. So you can easily replicate, take snapshots, replicate the data to another site, keep it there for as long as you want, and do that in a very, very easy way. On the very right, you have here the Cloud DVX platform, which is what I was referring to as our software running in the public cloud, and can easily give you a very, very cost-effective, forever incremental backup in AWS S3. And so once you have these two offerings, you essentially have an offsite copy of data that can be instantly spun up to give you the just-in-time DR resources that you need in the public cloud, especially on VMware Cloud on AWS, which really means that you pay for VMware Cloud on AWS for the few hours that you run your test event or that you run your DR event, and then you can shut it down. And so what we enable for you is just-in-time VMware Cloud on AWS SDDC, giving you complete operational consistency from on-prem to the public cloud. All of which is made possible with our SaaS service called CloudShift. So DVX is what you run on your production side. It could also be running on your DR side. If you're using public cloud, Cloud DVX is what's running on the DR side. That's what's taking the data, keeping it very efficiently in S3, deduplicated, compressed across all sites that are replicating, end-to-end encryption. And you have CloudShift, which can then orchestrate DR between. So let's kind of go a little bit deeper and see how it all works, right? So you have a Daydream system, and that is replicating data that's running on the VMs that are running on that platform to another site, or it's replicating data to the cloud where it's being stored on Amazon S3. You have CloudShift that's running as a SaaS service. It could be in your Amazon account, or it could be Daydream hosted. And that is essentially going to orchestrate the recovery to VMware Cloud on AWS, where now you get one single vCenter to manage all of this environment, and you get zero RTO recovery, no matter whether it's prem to prem or it's prem to cloud. So let's look at how this all works, right? So you have private cloud, is converged primary, backup, and DR. You have your backup replication that's happening to the cloud. It's forever incremental, and it's globally deduped, which means that any data that is transferred between the two systems, you only send the unique incrementals, which means you don't send any data that this other site may already have, which speeds up a lot of your data transfers, and it also lowers your egress costs, especially in the context of cloud. You have these backups living in S3, and so it's the most cost-effective way with a good RTO that you can blend together, and so you can store as much data as you want in the cloud. And you have the hybrid cloud leveraging VMware Cloud on AWS, where we can give you just-in-time disaster recovery and a complete operational consistency across this end-to-end stack. So if you have a VM that needs to be moved from one site to another site in case of a disaster, you can quickly, instantly power it on the other site, zero RTO, or you can instantly power it on in VMware Cloud on AWS, zero RTO, and only pay for VMware Cloud on AWS for the duration of the disaster. So what it really means for you is single console, SaaS service, nothing to deploy, install, manage for DR, zero RTO plus deep backups. Because we are a converged primary and backup platform, you not only get disaster recovery, but you also get ransomware recovery. But because with the same plan, you can recover from the latest snapshot, or you can recover from the older snapshot. You get instant failover. So you get pay-per-use VMC SDDC, where there is no virtual machine conversion as the VMs go from one cloud to another cloud. This is a big issue with other solutions that require you to convert your virtual machine from one environment to another environment, let's say from a VMware VMDK to an Amazon AMI. And that really does not allow you to get zero RTO. And secondly, it forces you to now have two management planes, which is very hard to manage, especially in a DR context. And lastly, we make DR fail-proof. Because of all of the infrastructure that we have visibility to, we are able to do continuous compliance checks. And I'll show that to you as I go to the demo, where we can make sure that the DR plan that you have set is compliance checked every 30 minutes. So the question that I should ask you guys is, what's your recovery compliance objective, right? So what's your RCO? And we can give you an RCO of 30 minutes so that when you do a test event or you do a failover event, it's actually going to work, right? So we'll cover a lot of more on this on the demo. Really quick summary. So CloudShift is a SaaS service. It can obviously give you disaster recovery. It can give you cybercrime recovery. But because it's a prem to cloud and a prem to prem offering with an inbuilt orchestration framework, it can as easily give you planned migration. It can also give you test dev orchestration, where you can spin up the data that's living on S3 in VMware Cloud and AWS and leverage all of the services that Amazon has to provide to that virtual machine for development or other use cases, and also analytics. So you kind of really get a true hybrid cloud solution with the simplest possible way to manage it. So that's possibly all I have on the slides. What I'd like to do next is quickly jump into the demo because that's the star of the show, and just kind of show you how it all works so that David, can I just confirm with you that you can see my screen?
Yes, sir. It looks good.
Thank you. So let me kind of give you the overview of the environment first. So this is the vCenter. This is one of the production sites. In that, I have about 10 or 11 virtual machines that I'm going to do a live failover for you all. They are clubbed under application folder, databases folder, and infrastructure folder. And you have about 4 VMs here, about 5 VMs here, and about 3 VMs here. This vCenter is where our UI plugs in, so you can see the integration is extremely seamless. And then I have the other site here, which is my dev site, where I'm going to do the DR. And you can see I've created the folders here, but they don't have any virtual machines at this point, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to fail over virtual machines from the prod site, which is VC1 here, to the dev site, which is VC3 here. Now, this is a prem to prem, but in case of VMC, which is VMware Cloud on AWS, it looks, smells, feels exactly the same. And that's the whole power of CloudShift, is that it looks no different than going from a prem to prem or from a prem to cloud, because everything is managed from the same interface, which is vCenter and the Daydream UI. So just a quick overview of the Daydream system. So we have the ability to show you all the virtual machines that are running on this platform, and at the same time show you the protection groups. And protection group is essentially the collection of VMs that we back up with point-in-time consistency. So all the VMs that are in the protection group are all snapped at this exact same point in time, so that when you restore that, they all come back up at the same point in time as well. And that's typically a problem when you use a backup system. They don't have the ability to back up multiple virtual machines with point-in-time consistency. So this gives you the ability to do that. So real quick, here's what's happening here. I've got 3 protection groups. I've got applications, databases, and infrastructure. And these 3 protection groups are essentially taking snapshots of the 3 VMs here, the 5 VMs here in the database, and the 4 VMs here in the infrastructure. So I have a policy where I'm taking these snapshots, and these snapshots are then being replicated to my dev site, right? So you can see that they're being replicated to my dev site, but they're also being replicated to my cloud site that's running in AWS. And so really easy. How do you get the cloud site going? Let me just show you that real quick. We don't require our customers to learn Amazon at all. We give them all the UI that they need to deploy our cloud services, specifically CloudShift in this case, you just need an Amazon account. You can enter your Amazon account credentials into our UI in your environment, and we spin up and deploy the CloudShift DR orchestration service in the cloud, and at that point, you're done. You don't have to manage it. You don't have to upgrade it. You don't have to recover if something happens in Amazon. We take care of the entire service for you. The same thing applies to Cloud DVX. So now that we have deployed the service, let's open the service. So once you deploy CloudShift, it shows up as a tab here with an arrow, which means it's running in the cloud. And here's how it looks. Hopefully you can still see this well. And you can see that CloudShift, first of all, gives you a multi-site topology. So here's my prod system replicating to my dev system, and here's my prod system replicating to Amazon S3. And this is giving me a health status of all the sites that are connected to this particular site. Now, what I'm going to do is, in the interest of time, I'm going to go ahead and kick off the DR event, where I'm going to fail over the virtual machines that are on prod 1 to prod 2 to dev site. And then once I kick that off, I'll go ahead and explain a little bit more about how this works. So I'm going to click on a test plan. You can see that it gives me the option for all the snapshots that are in that site where I need to fail over. It could also be on another site, in which case it will replicate before it does a failover. And I can go ahead and select different snapshots here, which is very, very important if you want to recover from DR as well as cybercrime. So I have my snapshots here. This is my applications protection group, where I had a few VMs. I have my databases. I have my infrastructure. I'm going to go ahead and say ignore all errors. You can obviously stop on every error if you choose to do so. But in this case, I'm going to go ahead, and this is what it's going to do. It's going to first bring up the infrastructure VMs. It's going to wait for a few seconds, bring up the databases, and it's going to then bring up the applications. Right? So I'll walk through the DR plan in just a second. So I'm going to go ahead and kick this off. Finish. And you can see that it's starting here. So I'll come back to this in a second. So it's going to start doing disaster recovery, and you can see that it's already starting to spin up a few VMs. This is what I mean by zero RTO. So it's super fast, and this is exactly how it works, no matter whether it's prem to prem or whether it's prem to VMware Cloud on AWS. So let's look at the plan in a little bit more detail. Now, the one thing you'll notice is if I go to the plan, you see this compliance check, right? So this is where we are essentially validating a plan every few minutes so that you can quickly get a compliance report, as you can see here with the compliance report, and make sure that your disaster recovery plan is in a good health. And I'll come back to this in a second. It might be a little bit slow because it's running the plan right now. Now, going back to the plan itself, you can see that since it's running, let me go ahead and edit this plan just to show you what's going on here. So you have full flexibility on where you want the DR to happen. So this is the site mapping. You can mention which prod site needs to go to which DR site. You can also mention easy examples of whether you want it to go to VMware Cloud on AWS or whether you want it to be prem to prem. You have the groups here, which you select, which is essentially the protection groups, which you want to fail over. You have the vCenter mapping. You have the vCenter folders mapping. You can specify which compute resources do you really want this to go to. And this is all examples where this plan is specifically for VMware Cloud on AWS. You can specify network changes that you want to happen on that particular VM as it relates to port groups. You have IP addresses mapping. You can run a special script in your environment as a step. And here's where you'll go in and orchestrate all the different steps that you want to happen in terms of your recovery, and then you can set compliance. So you can say, I want to receive a compliance check, email every few minutes. So once you do that, you'll see if I go back to the vSphere site, you can see that my databases are already recovered. My infrastructure VMs are also already recovered, and my apps should come on live in just a few seconds. While we are waiting for that, let me just show you one more thing on how you do VMware Cloud on AWS. So we give you a very simple way to deploy the VMware Cloud on AWS HDDC on demand. So all you need to do is register your VMC account, and you click on deploy a new HDDC. Once you deploy, we deploy the HDDC for you, and we give you the vCenter credentials as soon as we have done with the deployment. And as soon as you do that, you can go ahead and update your DR plan with a few more details, like the vCenter folder, the vCenter networking information that you want, and then kick off the plan to VMware Cloud on AWS, all from this one single pane of glass. So I'm just going to go back and quickly check and make sure that this is working the right way. So I think it's currently waiting for the application VMs to be powered on, but as you can see, it's pretty much on its way right here. So you've got all the application VMs that are here as well. And so we failed over about 10 to 11 VMs in a matter of few minutes, all with one interface. So that's pretty powerful. The last thing I want to show you is you can go back to the history, and then let's say it's probably running right now, so I'll show you a different plan. You can create a PDF report, and that's pretty cool. So you can see exactly what the plan did, where it went, what are the mappings, what were the steps, and so that you can easily file this with your compliance and audit team, and you're ready. You kind of can go on and do something more productive, with your time. So that's the demo, and David, that's all I have for the team today. Thank you.
Excellent. I love seeing a live demo. Thank you, Tushar. I know that takes a little extra time and effort, but I think the audience really appreciates it. And I love the VMware Cloud on AWS support. We do have some questions here for you. While I ask you those questions, I'm going to pop up this poll for the audience. The question is, what additional information would you like about the Daydream solution that we just saw? And it's a multi-select question, so select as many as you would like. So let's see, first question here is about hardware versus software. Is the Daydream solution, do you all sell hardware to run this on, or does the person bring their own hardware? How does that work?
Yeah, great question. So on the on-premises system, we allow you to bring any server, and so you can bring your own compute. We install software on that compute, and that powers the performance, and we leverage the local flash in that server to give you all the performance. We do sell the data nodes, which are the capacity nodes, and so you buy the capacity nodes from us on-prem, and then you basically bring your own servers. In the cloud, it's obviously all software. So we sell the capacity software for S3, and Cloud Shift runs in the cloud as well. And so with that, you can orchestrate recovery prem to prem on DVXs, or you can orchestrate recovery prem to VMC.
Okay, very nice. And I assume this would be a good solution for someone who has maybe an aging SAN or NAS that's up on maintenance. They could replace that with the Daydream solution?
Absolutely. I wouldn't just say aging, David. I would say that no matter what your requirements are from a performance footprint. We have some publicly available performance benchmarks. We can scale dramatically. We can scale to petabytes of capacity and about 15 to 18 million read IOPS. So it's a very, very high performance. But from a customer perspective, performance is just one part of the equation. By converging backup and by converging DR, what they really get is complete elimination from storage management, complete elimination from backup management, complete elimination of DR management, so that they can focus their time on more strategic business initiatives. And so this is a great solution for a lot of customers, no matter whether they have aging or modern all-flash arrays.
Very nice. Very nice. Okay. Another question that came in here, they're asking, can you reiterate the difference between Cloud Shift and Cloud DVX?
Yeah, great question. So Cloud Shift is the DR orchestration service. And that service is the UI that I showed you, where you can put in your plans and you can see multi-site information from a manageability perspective. Cloud DVX is essentially our infrastructure service that runs in AWS. And so think of Cloud DVX as the software that's doing the job of replicating the data and storing that data on S3 with deduplication and compression. And think of CloudShift as the orchestration software as a service that can do your DR orchestration between two DVXs or DVX to VMware Cloud on AWS.
Okay, very nice. And for someone who wants to get started, what's the easiest way? What do you recommend?
Just give us a call. We are very happy to give you a full-fledged demo. If you really have requirements that need you to go fast, we can deploy a POC in your site within a couple of days. And so we're just ready to go, and just give us a call and connect with us, or go to daydream.com and request a demo, and we can take care of the rest.
Excellent, excellent. Well, that's all the time we have for live questions. I have assigned some more very technical questions to you. Maybe you can answer those and share those with the audience. Thank you so much for being on today.
Thank you. My pleasure.
For more information on Daydream, of course, visit their website, daydream.com. Also, check out the handout that's available right there in your console. And before I introduce our next presenter, I'd like to announce our first prize winner. We have a Tango $500 gift card going out to Kumar Tamada from North Carolina. Congratulations, Kumar, from North Carolina. We've got 3 more gift cards to give away, so make sure you stay tuned for those prize drawings. And now I'm excited to introduce our next presenter on today's Disaster Recovery in the Cloud EcoCast event. That is Mr. Sam Woodcock. He is a Senior Director of Cloud Strategy at Alliant. Sam, are you with us?
I am. Good morning. Good afternoon to everyone. It's a pleasure to join you today.
Thanks for being on. Take it away.
Thank you so much. So as I said, pleasure to be with everyone today. Today, obviously, we're talking about disaster recovery in the cloud. So it's really a great pleasure to show you what we can do at the Island cloud platform side of things. I did want to give a quick introduction to myself before we get started. I've been with Island almost 7 years now. I'm based in London, so I'm dialing here. It's about 6:20 in the evening, and it's again, a great pleasure to speak to everyone today. As we said, I'm a Director of Cloud Strategy here at Island, but prior to that, I actually worked directly with customers to design solutions specifically aligned to everything that we offer, including disaster recovery as a service. You can always find out more at Island Cloud as well. So first of all, I wanted to get started. When we speak to customers and we speak to prospects around disaster recovery, we get the same message from everyone we speak to. Everyone expects that DR should be seamless to implement, it should be painless to manage, and it also should be effortless to consume. And so that's actually the goal of the Island DR platform, to meet these 3 key objectives of our prospects, of our customers, so that when they actually have to leverage the platform for disaster recovery, they have a seamless experience that meets their objectives, their business can keep running, and their services can be available to their end customers. So that's really the overarching goal of the Island DR platform. Now, obviously in today's world, everyone expects to do more with less. They want to achieve the solution, but obviously do things such as reduce cost, make it more efficient, make it scalable, make it effective for the business, but do that with less resources from an IT perspective, less resources from a financials perspective, and really make it easy and effortless to consume, as we mentioned. But what are the challenges that we are trying to address with disaster recovery? What are all of the organizations that we speak to today trying to address, and what's at risk? Obviously, with DR as a service, I think everyone knows it's not just about the application downtime. That application downtime obviously has a huge impact on organizations, and that can be from loss of productivity through to reputational damage, direct loss of revenue, unrecoverable data, and obviously a lot of implications, whether that's large or small to a business. And we feel actually when we surveyed the market, a lot of organizations are actually not meeting the objectives that they want to meet for their business. They're falling short, and they're looking for a better solution, a better solution for their business. And actually, a lot of organizations actually at the moment potentially wouldn't be able to survive a significant IT outage, whether that's a natural disaster, ransomware, modernization, or cloud migration. These are the types of things that organizations are addressed with solving, and they're really looking for disaster recovery solutions that align to meet these objectives. And we feel from our side that we've got a compelling solution for customers to address their disaster recovery requirements and reduce the risk that the impact can actually result in. So let me talk about disaster recovery as a service and what that is and why use a disaster recovery as a service platform and why use disaster recovery as a service in general in the cloud. And we really feel it comes down to three core things. First of all, customers and organizations in general are looking to reduce their costs. And when you look at DR as a service, a lot of these DR as a service platforms, such as Alliant, enable organizations to reduce costs because typically you can actually eliminate the need for a secondary site, a secondary data center. And within that secondary data center, obviously, hardware and software costs, maintenance, support, refresh cycles, all can add up to the overall cost of solutions. Now with disaster recovery as a service, where you can simply consume storage, it eliminates some of the costly elements around the platform, the site, and all of the capacity that you may need traditionally with a traditional DR solution. So we feel that reducing cost is a major win for a lot of organizations. And again, with the Island platform, you can simply consume storage for your virtual machines. Everything else can be leveraged on demand, and you can pay for that at the point of use. Typically, that's hopefully a very rare incident when you have a disaster. But typically on a monthly basis, that means that your costs are extremely reduced, but you have the capacity you need should you ever have to fail over. So that's a really key win for using disaster recovery as a service. I think also the market has evolved and the confidence in DR as a service has evolved. So when you use a DR as a service solution, we're really trying to reduce the risk, increase the confidence in the solution, and meet and exceed your objectives, not only from a recovery perspective, but also the security and the compliance of the platform that you're choosing to leverage. And again, increased confidence in DR solutions is, again, a key win. Again, with these solutions, you can also test non-intrusively at any point in time, which is giving you the confidence that if you ever have to use a solution, it's going to meet your objectives from an RTO and RPO perspective, as well as a general recoverability perspective as well. And two outcomes, or the outcome of those two aspects, is really that allows the IT organization, the people looking after solutions on a day-to-day basis, to shift their focus to be actually on the innovation part of the business, scaling their production environment, looking at application development, things that are going to build revenue within your organization. You no longer have to really think about the disaster recovery platform and all of the things that go with actually a working service. You can focus your efforts on other more important areas of your business. So we really think there's a really compelling need for disaster recovery in the cloud. So the question comes, where do you start with all of this? What does it take to successfully onboard and take and consume a DR as a service solution? We really feel that solutions come from great design. Design doesn't come by magic. It really is a process of being crafted with people from both sides. It's a partnership between a provider and the IT administrators within an organization. Those two teams need to come together and understand the objectives, not only from a recoverability perspective, the RTOs, the RPOs, but also things like how users are going to connect to the service should they ever have a disaster recovery event hit in their organization. So we feel everything starts with great design, and that design process is integral to a working solution for an organization. So we start there from our side. So how do we do that? Well, how we do that is we built specific solution tools within our team that enable us to assess a customer's environment so that we understand exactly what is running within a customer's premises. That helps us understand exactly all of the workloads that we're intending to protect. And through our years of experience, this tool actually automatically pre-checks for some of the common pitfalls of previous cloud projects or DR projects in general. It can check for the compatibility of the workloads, ensure they're completely compatible within the cloud environments that we run at Island, and ensure that specific areas of the solution that might need a differing disaster recovery replication technology, or maybe a separate platform for things like Oracle databases or VDI workloads that may have specific licensing requirements or hypervisor requirements, that we actually understand those things up front, and we can make sure that the platform that we propose to you as a customer meets those objectives. We capture this right at the start of the process, and we leverage this information to ensure that the solutions that we are providing are accurate, they work, they're compatible, and they work for your business. Things like virtual machine resources, the allocated resources to a machine, disk sizes, disk layouts, those types of things may need specific solutions in certain types of cloud environments in general. But if we understand those things up front, we can actually make sure that the solution that we provide is going to meet those objectives. With things like disaster recovery as a service or data protection in general, moving that data from point A to point B is extremely important as well. Meeting your recovery point objectives is critical. So how do we do that? That obviously relies on high speed, high throughput bandwidth. and a low latency connection to the data center that you're choosing to leverage for disaster recovery. So part of our pre-check with this tool, which we call Island Catalyst, is to run a latency assessment against all of Island's 9 global data centers to understand which data center is best for your business and which one's the best for your end users to connect to should they have to leverage the cloud for disaster recovery. So we're actually recommending the right data center for you as a business, and we're running data point B, making recommendations as to whether you maybe need additional bandwidth on premises, and doing again that pre-check up front to make sure everything's valid and effective. At the Island side, obviously, we have high-speed internet bandwidth, and we make sure that you also have the relevant bandwidth to make this happen as well. Part of the assessment also includes understanding what you're choosing to actually leverage in the cloud and what you want from a disaster recovery perspective. Maybe you want to take an assessment on what would disaster recovery cost me and what would disaster recovery cost and look like for all of my workloads. Or maybe I'm just interested in getting started with my tier 1 mission critical applications. The Catalyst tool will actually allow you to categorize your workloads into these tiers, and then we can give you specific solutions and pricing to meet these objectives from your business. You'll also see on this screenshot, we look at things like capacity. So we know up front what capacity we need to provide you the service. We also understand things like the usage patterns on your virtual machines from a peak and average perspective, so that we can not only give you cost projections for testing and live failover events, but more importantly, our so if we can see that your resources, your virtual machines are consuming a certain amount of compute and RAM, we can give you those costs and understand that up front so that you only pay for what you use in the cloud. So this is the first step in the journey. We take this through to our deployment phase and ensure that we deploy a successful solution to your business. This is a tool that's available on island.com, and we can use this to take the first step into assessing disaster recovery in the cloud. Now, moving on, what are the critical capabilities that you should evaluate with any provider, whether that's Island or another provider in the marketplace? Well, we believe it's these key core elements within a business. You want a provider that can meet your location objectives. Data sovereignty is extremely important, making sure that the site and your data stays within a specific geographical region. Does the provider have the choice of locations to meet your growing needs as a business? Is the compatibility of the platform that you're actually replicating to providing a seamless and successful recovery platform for your virtual machines? Island is a VMware-based provider, so if you're a VMware-based customer on premises, the most compatible solution that you need to look for is a VMware-based platform to recover into. That's going to give you the best possible recovery times, recovery points, and the most effective application failover. We also believe as a core tenet that you should be looking for security built in. It's all well and good failing over to a cloud platform, but you need to make sure that adheres to your security and compliance requirements so that you don't end up having another disaster hit you while running in the cloud, and it also meets your business's compliance requirements. You often may be working in regulated industries where these are extremely important. You need to look for a provider that has these within the platform. Recovery SLAs and availability SLAs, making sure that once you're running in the cloud for disaster recovery, those workloads stay up and running while running in the cloud as well is extremely important. What is the provider doing from a support perspective? Can they help you throughout the journey, not only from a pre-sales perspective, but to actually onboard you and support you going forward from a 24/7, 365 basis? Can they offer self or fully managed options for disaster recovery? And finally, also, we believe in transparency, or we think that customers are looking for transparency in the cloud market. What controls, visibility, and management capabilities do you have upon a failover event? What does that look like? So hopefully I'm going to run through some of the things that Island provides that we hope meet those objectives as a business. From an Island perspective, we have an 100% availability SLA. We're built on VMware, we have high availability, and we have that geographical scalability to offer the needs wherever you choose to have disaster recovery. We pick technologies that allow you to achieve your recovery points and recovery times, whether that's real-time or 24-hour RPOs, and what type of RTOs are you looking for. So we partner with Veeam and Zerto from a disaster recovery perspective to align to the technology that you need to adhere to those RPOs and RTOs. We aim to provide you with a simplified management experience so that you can not only fail over, orchestrate the failover, report on that, but you can also actually look at billing information, usage visibility, and control the workloads once they're running in our cloud. We offer a no-compromise security and compliance posture, so we have inbuilt security technologies, certifications, and we're going to run through those as well. And we also believe in having inbuilt support at no cost, 24/7, 365 technical support, as well as managed DR options and cloud migration services, and that's what we believe in at Island. So quickly, a little bit about Island. We've been in business 25 years. We offer in 9 regions. We've been doing disaster recovery for 12 years. And we're currently the leader in the Gartner Magic Quadrant for disaster recovery. And we've been fortunate enough to be in that survey for the last 3 years as a leader. So we believe looking to a provider, you need to look for a provider with expertise in this marketplace. But you can see along the bottom corner, we align to a lot of technology vendors in the market as well. The leading providers of data protection services, Veeam and Zerto, have named us both Impact and Cloud Partner of the Year for 3 years here. We believe in making sure that we have a platform that has best-in-breed technologies from VMware, Veeam, Zerto, and Cisco, for example. We also work heavily in the channel, so we are also a 5-star winner from a CRM perspective for the channel as well. All of this really is talking to our level of experience in the DR marketplace today. Again, I mentioned locations. We have choices of locations across North America, into the UK, EMEA, into Asia, and also into Australia. So you can pick and choose the location that works for your business. And again, we choose the location and we make sure that your data stays in that region. So if you have strict compliance requirements, it doesn't move outside of these regions unless you choose to do that. But we also offer the ability to leverage connectivity into these locations. So if you need to bring in an MPLS connection, a point-to-point circuit, direct connectivity or VPN, we have all of those options. And I think when you look at disaster recovery as a service, yes, it's all about moving the data from point A to point B and successfully running those applications, but that's nothing unless your customers and your users can connect to those services. So we offer a wide variety of services to connect through to the cloud platform, again, back-ended by support and compliance as well. Talking about security and compliance, our cloud platform has lots of technologies built into it from a security and compliance perspective, starting off from things like two-factor authentication, inbuilt VMware NSX firewalling, IPsec and client VPN, through to things like storage encryption at rest, integrity monitoring, log inspection, intrusion detection, vulnerability scanning. All of these core technologies are built into our cloud platform for your workloads to leverage as soon as they spin up in our cloud environment. So if you suffer a DR event, those cloud platform and those VMs spin up on our environment, they're protected inherently by core security technologies. And we believe this is extremely important for a successful, secure DR service. In terms of compliance frameworks and certifications, I saw a range of questions just before I joined around certifications and frameworks. And you can see that Island has a range of these certifications across different industries, from pharmaceuticals through to healthcare, financial services, through to quality management and IT. You'll see, hopefully, a lot of logos that you're looking for, that your business needs when you consume any service in the cloud. And we'd love to talk to you directly with our compliance team about how we can help you in this journey from a compliance perspective. One of the ones I'll call out specifically here is the Cloud Security Alliance STAR certification. This is directly aligned to the cloud industry, and Island is fortunate enough to be the gold standard within that industry from a certification perspective. So we believe in guiding you through this journey from the initial phase of pre-sales through to actually deploying and onboarding you with direct teams from a project management and a engineering perspective, through to validation, making sure that the solution that we've provided to you is meeting your SLAs, objectives, and RTOs, through to the support the overall service on an ongoing basis. So this is the journey that you'll take through with the Island Cloud team, and we will only sign off on a project once we've actually successfully met your objectives that we've agreed before we've actually signed off on the project. So that's a little bit about how we guide you through to success with our solutions. As I mentioned, we do have a strong focus on providing self-service, and we feel a lot of businesses want control and power and management capabilities over their DR solution. They want the ability to press the button and actually control the failover and testing whenever they want to do that. And we have a full self-service option for our customers. But we also have our autopilot managed services available for customers who just purely want to focus on their business, their innovation, and have another provider to take disaster recovery service off the table and manage it for their business. So we have an end-to-end managed service for DR where we take care of annual testing. We actually onboard you and control the replication technology. We actually make sure it's running and adhering to your requirements, and we provide additional reporting and visibility into the success of the solution. So we have both self-managed and fully managed solutions for you to look at today as well. Now, I mentioned support. I mentioned the availability as key requirements. We're fortunate enough to have a great support team at Island. across Houston, into London, and into Australia. We have support knocks in all of those regions, and we have currently a 98% support satisfaction rating, as well as a really nice plus 71 from a Net Promoter. And if anybody's ever seen Net Promoter, this is a really nice rating for us. We feel a lot of our customers really see the difference with us from a support perspective. And again, having availability once you're running in DR is extremely important. We back-end it by an 100% availability SLA. You can see a quote here from Mike Howell at Rentokil. This is a customer I worked with directly. They have 3 core sites protected with Island today, with a standardized replication solution that's cost-effective and that's allowing them to focus on the innovation for their business. So if I talk about data protection, we're talking about disaster recovery as a service today. We do that through 2 key technologies, Veeam and Zerto, both great from a replication perspective. We can fit that technology to the one that you want to leverage and based on your recovery point objectives. But we also feel that data protection is not just disaster recovery, it's also making sure that you have a strategic archival and backup process going on as a business that allows you to have both local and remote and cloud backup all in one place. So Island does offer cloud backup services across Office 365, on-premises with Veeam, as well as object storage offerings to meet the needs of customers using other backup technologies in the industry. And then again, we focus on disaster recovery primarily for businesses, all managed through one secure cloud console, which is the management interface that our customers can use to manage their workloads on an ongoing basis. So it's my pleasure to really show you that secure cloud console briefly here today. What I would say is we'd love to show you a strategic direct demo to you based on your specific requirements, but I'm just going to hit some of the high notes of what that cloud console provides to you through our interface today. So first of all, when you log into our cloud interface, we have a dedicated section for disaster recovery. We call it continuity. And this is where we've directly integrated both Veeam and Zerto from a disaster recovery perspective. So regardless of the technology that you pick to actually replicate data to Island, you have one view to actually consume and see the health status of your disaster recovery solution. So this allows you to see the applications you're protecting, what you're maybe not protecting within your business, and actually show you real-time metrics as to the RPO objectives that you're achieving, and things like when the last test happened within those applications, so you can keep track of that from a compliance perspective. At all times, you can download protection summaries, which will detail exactly what you're protecting from a disaster recovery perspective and allow you to show that to your compliance team and your business overall. What this also gives you is an option to directly fail over and test your workloads within the cloud as well. And I'll show you how we do that within the cloud console. But before I do that, obviously making sure that the solution meets your objectives is critical. At all times through either the Veeam or Zerto solutions that you're leveraging, when you log into the cloud console, you can see not only in real time, but also historically, what the recovery point objectives that you're achieving are. And in this case, I'm leveraging Zerto as a technology, and the average RPO here is around the 5 to 10 second mark. But this is helping you to understand what your RPOs are on an application basis, and actually take this detail and show this to your team within your organization. So this is helping show how effective the DR solution is. Then once you've got that DR solution in place, within the Island Cloud platform, you can define the runbooks. This is a runbook orchestration engine that Island has developed uniquely that actually allows you to group together the applications that you're protecting and define disaster recovery scenarios so that when you click the button, you can choose one of these runbooks and it will orchestrate the order in which your virtual machines and your applications start for your business, placing them in the relevant networks, defining the boot order of your virtual machines, any boot delays, placing things in the relevant networks. It's orchestrating the process of DR for your business. You can see here that I'm picking a couple of different applications. In my example, I'm choosing to fail over my Exchange system and my payroll application. Within the cloud platform itself, you have full self-service capabilities to perform not only tests at any point, but also failovers to the cloud at any point in time. So if you have disaster hit, you can't get back to your on-premise location or your IT administration platform locally, you always have the ability from any device to fail over to the Island cloud platform with any technology you choose to leverage with our interface itself. Now, once you've done a test, obviously proving the testing has happened to the business is extremely important. We allow you to download the recovery failover reports at any point in time through the Cloud Console. This not only shows you the actual RTO that you've achieved for the application, but will also detail all of the steps that you took and how all of those virtual machines were orchestrated and started up into the platform itself. And you can make your own notes in this to actually have a full audit trail over your DR testing. And this is extremely important to show the effectiveness of the solution itself. And this, again, is relevant for both the solutions that we offer for disaster recovery as a service. Once you've failed over, obviously having predefined networking is extremely important. I mentioned end user access is critical to a business. We integrate VMware-based NSX firewalls onto our cloud platform so that you can predefine the access through to your virtual machines. You can make sure that they have the relevant internal networks. You can also make sure that you change your DNS records should you need to actually access services externally on the cloud platform. So this is an integrated, at no cost appliance that's built into the platform. But what we also offer is the ability for you to bring in your own third-party virtual or physical appliances from a networking perspective, so that if you've actually created your own networking layout on-prem that you want to actually mirror within the cloud platform itself, you can bring in your familiar technologies and actually connect through as seamlessly as you would have done to your production environment. So we have a range of options there for networking, and it can all be managed through the cloud interface here at Island. From a dashboard perspective, you'll see here I'm navigating down to an individual virtual machine. This gives you full control and visibility over the virtual machine workloads that are running in the cloud platform. So you can do all of the common tasks that a VMware-based administrator would have done on premises. You have the ability to make changes to virtual machines, open a VM console, and actually have visibility over all of the performance stats and information from CPU, memory, network, as well as disk throughput, I/O, and latency. So we're providing all of the tools to allow you to administrate the virtual machines on an ongoing basis, because that management capability is extremely important. And I'm showing here also, as I scroll through to the individual virtual machine, we also do things like daily backups once you're running on our DR platform. So that, again, when you're running in it from a disaster recovery perspective, you can ensure that your virtual machines are backed up on a daily basis so that if something happens while running an Island, you have a way to restore that. And if you're actually envisaging running on the Island cloud platform for a longer period of time, we can tie on cloud-to-cloud DR using the same technologies to another Island facility. These same technologies can also be used as a migration mechanism. Island also does cloud hosting from a production perspective, and the environment that you're failing into it from a disaster recovery perspective is the same as our production platform. So moving on, I also just wanted to quickly highlight a couple of things. From a security perspective, again, as I mentioned, we've inbuilt technologies from Trend Micro and Tenable, for example, from vulnerability scanning through to malware and antivirus. These things are always visible. You can trigger scans. You can report on the health status of your security at all times. And these can be used for additional use cases. One of the common ones that we see is the ability to do a test failover into the Island cloud and then run an on-demand penetration test and get the results of that and triage those issues within a test bed before then failing back. All of these tools are available to your DR workloads at any point in time. And also critical when anybody consumes a cloud service is having real-time and historical billing information so that you don't have surprise costs and you understand exactly what the cloud resources are costing you as a business. Again, as I mentioned, you purely pay for CPU and memory based on what's actually consumed rather than allocated, and we actually review that on an hourly basis, and so you only pay for that point of use, and you have full billing visibility here through the cloud platform. So hopefully that's a taster of what we've shown from a demo perspective. Again, I'd encourage you to visit our website and go through to Island to get a full one-on-one demonstration. There's a lot more to this, and we can give you a live demonstration at that point. But I did want to finish off and show you a couple of ways to connect with Island. First of all, we built a whole bunch of technical materials, best practice and information around disaster recovery, as well as the other services that we offer around data protection and hosting. You can get to that at success.island.com. We also encourage direct feedback to our product team as a customer or a prospect of Island so that you can actually see changes made to our platform in general. We developed our own cloud platform and interface that you can control the direction of. We also publish a lot of blog articles on island.com with, again, best practice and information there. And finally, what I'd also say is, again, the next step that I encourage is visiting island.com. Going to the Island Catalyst page. This is where you can get hold of that assessment tool that I mentioned at the start to give your environment an assessment, and we can give you specific solution information about how you can get to this point of leveraging DR in the cloud. So hopefully that's been useful. I'd really encourage the next step, come and contact Island at the island.com address and really encourage any questions that anybody has at this point.
Yeah, great presentation, Sam. Let's see, we do have some questions here for you. While I do that, I'm going to pop up this poll question for the audience. It says, what additional information would you like about the Alliant solution? And it's a multi-select question. So let's see, first question they're asking here is about how often should you test and update a DR plan? What's your recommendation on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously a balance between what time you have from your side and what other projects you're working on, but I would at least encourage, most likely, at least 2 tests a year would be a good starting point. But I think the benefit nowadays with a lot of DR as a service solutions is it gives you the ability to test non-intrusively at any point in time, which means it doesn't affect your production environment, and it will also not affect the actual replication or protection itself. So this is really giving a lot of organizations the ability to test more frequently, and also because of that cost element, only paying for what you consume, this is making testing more cost-effective as well. So I would actually say that, based on my experience, organizations are choosing to test maybe on a monthly basis or a quarterly basis, but again, they could do this every day if they needed to. And that's really the benefit of Cloud DR as a service, from what I see.
Okay. And then a question came in here from Keith. He's asking about hypervisor support. What do you all support for disaster recovery as a service in terms of hypervisors?
Yeah, it's a great question. So today we're firmly focused on the VMware-based marketplace, so customers running VMware as a hypervisor for disaster recovery as a service. And the reason that I say that is generally when you look to do something like VMware to a different hypervisor or cloud platform, or start from one hypervisor and move it to a VMware-based platform, obviously there's compatibility and certain other things that you need to be aware of that can impact your recovery time and recovery point objectives, as well as the general success of DR solutions. So we believe that today solutions really work best if you go from one hypervisor to the same type of hypervisor. That generally means that you have a more successful solution. For our other products, just as an example, things like Cloud Backup, for example, we can meet the needs of other hypervisors such as Hyper-V and AHV, but today we are focused specifically on VMware for DR as a service.
Okay, all right. Excellent. Well, I think that's all the questions we have right now, but a great presentation. Really, really great to have you on the event today. Thanks, Sam.
Thanks for having me. Thank you.
For more information on Alliant, check out the link that's right there in your audience console. If you click on that link, that will take you to the Alliant Catalyst website, and that's where you can fill out a form there to get a free tool to help you remove the guesswork in right-sizing your cloud environment. So make sure that you check that out. And it's time now to move on to our next presenter, and that is Mr. Jens Dickmeis. He is a cloud systems architect at NetApp. Jens, are you with us?
I am. Hello, everybody. As said, my name is Jens Dickmeis. I actually manage our cloud solutions architecture team, and we're the guys that actually wrote the product we're talking about. And we're going to be talking about Cloud Volumes ONTAP and how you can use that for disaster recovery. So as we talk about that, we're going to go and focus on what it is. Some of the use cases, I'm going to primarily focus on the DR because that's what this webcast is about, but Cloud Volumes ONTAP is significantly more than that. And then really get into the meat and potatoes and show you how to go and get your data to the cloud in an efficient manner. So, but before I begin, I want to go and talk a little bit about the data fabric vision that NetApp has. And it's we have on-premises solutions, which are endpoints that then can connect to a co-location facility or to a public cloud solution provider. So get your data where you need it, when you need it, in the format that you need. But we're going to focus on the cloud portion of that today, which is Cloud Volumes ONTAP. So what is Cloud Volumes ONTAP? So anyone that knows NetApp knows that we've been doing data manageability for 25 years. And we took what we did from a hardware perspective and removed the requirement for the hardware and created a virtualized version of that for the cloud service providers. So we have for AWS and for Azure, and buy this either through the marketplace or through a license from NetApp. And it allows you to go and use those same tools that you use on premises for your NetApp solutions out in the cloud. But what if you're not a NetApp customer and you want to go and look at a solution that's going to drive your costs down in the cloud? That's where the Cloud Volumes ONTAP really helps with its storage efficiencies and the additional tools that it has available to it. So if you're a NetApp customer, you're already familiar with using SnapMirror to get your data between data centers. You can use that now to go and move your data out to the cloud and not have to have that second data center. But we also have the capabilities of doing snapshots, which is our point-in-time clones of the data set that you're using that use no additional space and are near instantaneous. So really, really nice capabilities to go and do a dev test environment in the cloud. But the real benefit that you get with Cloud Volumes ONTAP is that you're going to be able to go and take those storage efficiencies of the dedupe compression compaction that we have and apply that to your data set that you have in the cloud. And we get, depending on the type of data that we're dealing with, anywhere between 10 and 90% storage efficiencies. So that can significantly reduce your cost of storage out in the cloud. The other aspects that we really want to go and stress with it is that you can do multi-protocol access for your storage systems out in the cloud. So if you need a system that has NFS and SMB services off the same volume, this is a solution that you would want to look at for that. But again, this is not just DR, but that is if you want to go and run things in the cloud. We've created a tool to go and manage that. It's called Cloud Manager, and it allows you to manage your on-premises and cloud environments. And I will demo in Cloud Manager the simplicity of that tool to go and bring up a Cloud Volumes ONTAP instance and then bring your data from on-prem to the cloud and allow you to go and have those DR and longer-term retention capabilities available to you. But if you're a NetApp customer already, then you've already been using tools like System Manager, Unified Manager, Insight, command line interfaces. All of those same tools that you've been using as a NetApp customer are still in play for the Cloud Volumes ONTAP instance because under the covers, it's the same operating system. All right, so let's go and talk about the use cases. The one that we're going to focus on today is disaster recovery in the cloud. This is getting your data out in the cloud in a consistent manner and being able to meet the SLA that you want and trying to go and do that in a cost-effective manner. So depending on the configuration that you're going to go and set this up at, you can go and get your DR costs down to 3.5 to 4 cents per gig per month is kind of an average we see. We've seen some customers being able to do that for less, depending on the configuration that we've done. So very, very cost-effective solution to get your DR out in the cloud. And it allows you to go and really remove the risk that you have when you go and bring things to the cloud and having to refactor your applications when you move to the cloud. That is a large part of the effort that people make when they go to the cloud, is that I have this application I want to bring to the cloud, but I have to now refactor how I do everything end-to-end from it. And that's not really what you want to do when you're talking DR. You want to be able to take what you have on-prem, replicate that to the cloud, and be able to run that same application in the same way in the cloud. And then when that DR event is over, be able to seamlessly bring that data back and have it be populated again on premises the same way as it was out in the cloud at that point in time. The next use case, and I won't focus on that much, is just running a production workload in the cloud. And this is don't want a data center, you want to go completely off of a CapEx model into an OpEx model and be able to go and run your applications without refactoring and being able to do it in a quick, easy manner. The next one is lightning fast DevOps. This one here I think is one of the really great benefits of the Cloud Volumes ONTAP services that we have, is that we're able to go and create multiple clones from Cloud Volumes ONTAP that take no additional space and are near instantaneous to get you a full read-write copy. And that's just some of the magic that happens in the background on how our operating system is built. And this here is one of those things where if you are in a DevOps world and you want to go and do this traditionally in the cloud, you are going to go and do a backup of your data set, then a restore of your data set, and another restore, and pay for multiple copies of that data set, plus the time to go and get that data set to be fully available. That can be quite a bit of cost and lost productivity. So what we'll have to go and do is look at that if you're in the DevOps world. But now the next one, which everyone should hopefully know if they've known NetApp, is if we go and run, that didn't go on the last one. So running file services in the cloud and being able to run multi-protocol. That's one of the big benefits of being able to run NFS and SMB off of the same source and target. So let's go and move on, and we'll talk about some of the benefits of running Cloud Volumes ONTAP. It gives you enterprise class manageability and gives you that enterprise class SLA capabilities that you're used to from an on-premises environment to the cloud. You can get up and running in minutes. You can go and migrate your data using SnapMirror, SnapVault seamlessly. You can go and move to the public cloud easily through drag and drop operations. And you can do this, have those cost savings through the compression and deduplication and other storage efficiencies that we bring to the mix. All right, enough talk about that. Let's go and actually see this in action. So we'll go and share my screen here. And you start off by going to cloud.netapp.com, and you can go and click on products and go to Cloud Volumes ONTAP, and you'll get to this screen here. You can click on a start. This can get you a 30-day free trial for a single node in AWS or Azure. To go for the NetApp portion of it, to go and give it a shot and see if it's going to meet your needs. We can also do 30-day licenses if you want to go and purchase from NetApp as well to allow you to go and get up and running. Once you start a free trial, it's going to take you to spin up a Cloud Manager. Cloud Manager is up and running in about 5 minutes, which then gives you this interface here. I've already discovered my on-prem system, which is a system in my data center, by going through the add working environments, hit discovery, and choosing my existing system, putting in my customer management IP and my credentials, which then gives me access to the system on premises, which, as you can see here, I've got several different volumes on here, but they're not protected at this point in time. So I want to go and send this out to the cloud, and in my scenario, I'm going to send this here to AWS. So I'm going to build an AWS single node system and call it DR, and I'll give it credentials. We can put additional tags in to go and put in up to 4 tags here. In my environment, for instance, I want to do a keep alive so that it doesn't get shut down on a regular basis by the processes running in the back end. We then choose our region. I'm in Virginia. I'm going to choose my VPC and my subnet, which are populated by default with where the Cloud Manager is sitting. We can have it create a security group for us, but if your security team wants to go and have one pre-created for it, they can do that and use the security group that has already been provisioned for it so that it's available for us to use. Authentication method, we generally recommend using key pair authentication to go and log into the Cloud Volumes ONTAP in the cloud. And then you just choose the key that you have access to so that you can SSH into it for manageability. Then we highly recommend encryption at rest. If you don't want to use the default AWS EBS keys, you can use any additional keys that you have in your environment. Then we go to our license type. The BYOL license is buying the NetApp license on an annualized term. And if you say no here, this is for pay-as-you-go. You just pay for however many hours that system is running. We have a bunch of pre-configured packages already created, like cost-effective DRs up to 10 terabytes of storage. These are great starting points. They're not endpoints you can modify as you go through and make changes. In my scenario, I need more than the 10 terabytes, but I don't need to go and have a massively high-performance workload. So I'm going to go to choose automatically creating that, or choose my policies for creating it, have it create a role for me. If I don't want to have it create the roles, I can have the security team go and build the role based on awesome. Let's try that again. Have it based on the policies on our site, and we have great documentation that goes into that. So then we go and choose the license type we want. So an Explore is up to 2 terabytes of underlying capacity. Standard is up to 10 terabytes of capacity. Premium is up to 368 terabytes of underlying capacity. For my scenario, I need the premium. And then we can have different instance types that we can choose depending on the performance characteristics we're trying to accomplish here. I'm going to stay with the default, the R4, because it's fairly cost effective and it will keep the cost of the DR solution down. Then we give our NetApp support credentials. So very important that every instance of Cloud Volumes ONTAP that is deployed comes with full 24/7, 365 support, just like a physical ONTAP system. So if you run into an issue, you call into 1-888-4NetApp or go to mysupport.netapp.com, and the support team can help you get the system up and running for you in the event of an issue. Then we're going to go and choose the underlying resources for what type of disk we want. We support the full gambit of EBS disks for it. Most times we recommend going with GP2 because it's going to have the best performance characteristics, even for a DR. If you want to go and drop the cost, you can use ST1, but be aware that it may take a little bit longer to go and bring your data in, and in the event of a DR, it may not be at the performant level that you want. Then you choose your disk type. In my scenario, I'm going to go with the 8 terabyte disk because I want the data to come in as quickly as possible. And I'm going to tier to S3. So that's a really nice capability that we have. That when we go and create our aggregate, we do a hybrid aggregate that includes EBS disk and an S3 bucket behind it, or if you're in Azure, that'd be an LRS disk and an Azure blob in behind it. And then when we go and bring the data in the SnapMirror configuration, it will actually move that data into that object storage rather than putting it onto that performance disk, freeing up that performance disk to actually be used for live data set if you so desire it to be used. And then we go and set our write speed. Normally, we tell you to go and use normal write speed. And what this does is it goes and puts the data into the NVMe disk and then writes it to the disk properly at a consistency point, which guarantees a 0 RPO. If you go and set it to a high write speed, the data comes in and gets committed at a later point in time to the disk. And we do CP points every 10 seconds, so you have potential of losing up to 20 seconds worth of data if you go into a higher write speed. Not a bad thing if you're doing your writes in for DR because you already have the data available on-prem already, so you can reproduce that easily. However, most times we recommend using normal so that you get that 0 RPO capabilities on it. The next aspect is that you can go and choose write once, read many. So this is our worm capability. It's a new feature that is coming out very soon. It's in preview right now, and that allows you to go and have a compliance type locking on those files. And then we create a volume. But because this here is going to be DR, I'm actually not going to create a volume here because I'm going to have it get created when I do my DR capabilities in. But I can create an NFS volume or an SMB volume, and then I set my export policy or my share name. And if I do a CIFS volume, let me just go and put information in here so that I can go to the next step. I can go and then have this get added to my Active Directory domain. Given that we're doing this for DR, I'm not going to do this at this point in time. I'm just going to skip this portion of it. I'm going to have to go and accept that I need to go and give credentials to get support, and I have to go and approve the purchase of what we're creating here. What we're creating will be a couple disks for the root and the boot disk, and then up to 8 terabyte disks for our data disks, and then we're going to take snapshots and an S3 bucket and the instance. So with that, but what if you want to do this programmatically and not have to go and worry about this graphical user interface? You can go and do all of this through an API. We have a full API set available here that you can copy out and then use that as a template on the road. And we have the full documentation available in the API documentation down in the bottom right-hand corner, as well as a Swagger API interface. So we hit go here, and in the real world, this takes about 25 minutes to get a Cloud Volumes ONTAP instance up and running. Given that I'm doing a demo, this here is actually going to take about a minute to complete. But during that, we can actually go and into timeline and see everything that is going on with that instance as it is building. And it will go and tell me what stage it's at, if there's any failures, and if I need to go and correct anything. My system here is very busy. I've got hundreds of users on it. So in the meantime, it finished building, and to get my data from my on-prem system out to the cloud is a very easy process. I go and take my on-prem system, I drag it over to the cloud. I then go and choose the volume or the intercluster lists that I want to send the data over between my on-prem system, choose my source volume, choose where I want to put it, give it a name. This scenario, I'm going to call it DR. And I am going to tier this to S3 so that I go and take advantage of those storage efficiencies of putting that data in the most cost-effective location for it. I can then go and choose the aggregate I want to put it on if I have multiple aggregates. Hit continue. So yeah, sorry about that. My headset must have cut out. We're going to set a max transfer rate. And for this here, if you are in a live environment and you don't want to go to saturate the bandwidth, we highly recommend limiting that connectivity. Then we're going to set our policies. So mirror is disaster recovery. We can do a mirror and vault or backup, which is a disaster recovery solution plus longer term retention. So you can have actual backup, like tape-like backup. And we have additional policies that you can use that allow up to 7-year retention capabilities along with that DR capabilities. So really flexible on what you want to do. As this is going to be just DR, I'm going to be doing a mirror schedule, and I can go and set my sync to as little as every 5 minutes. So what that allows me to do is get a really, really low RPO and RTO capabilities. For my scenario, I only want to do this every hour. So I'm going to go and acknowledge that I'm going to purchase additional resources, but I want to know what I'm purchasing. I'm not actually buying any additional resources. I'm actually just creating a new volume on the aggregate I have. I'm going to go and create the relationship between the on-prem system and the system out in the cloud, and then replicate that data over and allow me to go and use that data set that's created here. As you remember, we never created a volume before, but we do have this volume here now. It is currently in a read-only format, but it is not exported and not accessible at this point in time. To actually bring this up as a DR, I'm going to go into replications, and I'm going to take the system that I have that is already snap mirrored and over, and I'm going to break it. And it's going to take a couple minutes to go and do all of the breaking and bringing it into a live full data set. I'm going to go back to volumes, and then I can go in here and I can edit this and export it. And now my data set is fully available out in the cloud for me to go and use in a DR scenario. And well, not quite yet. It will be there in a moment. Waiting for the mount command to come up. Once the mount command shows up, it will go and give me the instructions on how to mount this. It's the standard NFS mounts. Make sure. I'm sure I said update. There we go. That is interesting. The demo gods have spoken that they don't want me to mount this. But once it's available in a full rewrite capacity, you're able to go and bring that data set back in and be able to use it. Once the DR event is complete, you just go back into the replications, and I click on the resync or reverse sync, and it's going to send my data from the cloud back to my on-prem environment. And then I can go and start running things back on-prem the way it was prior to the DR event with all the data that has been brought into the system in the cloud. All right, and that is the demo in a nutshell. If you want to learn more, please go to cloud.netapp.com, and there's a ton of information there. We have some great information at our community site. If you want to follow me on Twitter, or even better, follow me on LinkedIn, I post a ton of great information on how to go and bring things into play and how to go and work with the cloud in different solutions. And you can chat with us in our chat functionality at cloud.netapp.com, and we can go and help you go and figure out some of the best ways to go and make use of these technologies.
Cool demo,
and
yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Yes.
cool demo. Thank you very much. We do have some questions here for you from the audience. While we do that, let me pop up this poll question for the audience that says, what additional information would you like about the NetApp solution that you just saw a demo of here? It's a multi-select question, so make sure you check that out. Let's see, first question they're asking about is, I think they're concerned about the cost potential of the cloud. Do you have any sort of cost calculator, or how do people how do people typically make that decision?
We get that question a lot. So we actually built a cost calculator. If you go to cloud.netapp.com, why don't I share my screen and I will actually show that. And you'll see that we have at cloud.netapp.com, we have a TCO calculator for AWS and Azure. And you can go in here and play with the numbers and see how it's going to be, how much it's going to cost you. So in my scenario, for instance, I had 200 terabytes I wanted to go and send over. I'm going to tier to S3. I can choose my S3 type that I want for this. Most times I go with standard to give the worst case scenario. And because this is DR, we are going to send 95% of that data to S3. And as you can see, that gets you a cost for 200 terabytes DR down to 2.5 cents per gig per month, a total of just under $5,000 a month, where the NetApp cost is roughly $1,700 and the AWS cost is $31.89. And it does a comparison of this. If you were to do this with just EBS disks on the same size EC2 instance, the cost would be roughly $22,000. So it's a significant cost savings by using the Cloud Volumes ONTAP solution for this.
Very nice. I like that cost calculator. That looks cool. It's a cool UI there. So let's see. Next question they're asking about what protocols are supported with this?
So we support the full NFS suite, the full SMB suite, and iSCSI.
Okay, nice. And how long does it take to get started if I want to set up a trial?
So if you want to go from zero to hero and you have full permissions, it takes roughly 1 hour.
Excellent, excellent. Well, there's a few more, maybe more technical questions there for you. I'm going to assign to you in the queue. Maybe you can share the results or the answers of those with everyone. But that's all the time we have for our live Q&A. Really great to have you on. Thank you so much for the cool demo.
Thank you guys very much for being here.
Excellent. For more information, make sure you visit netapp.com. Also, check out the handout that's available for download right there in your audience console. That handout covers NetApp Cloud Volumes ONTAP, and it's got 10 good reasons to check it out. So before I introduce our next presenter, actually let me announce our prize winner, and that is, this is for another $500 Tango gift card, Peter Bertelson, from Iowa. Congratulations, Peter from Iowa. All right. Let's go ahead and move on with our next presenter. That is Brad Jervis, Senior Cloud Architect at Offsite Data Sync. Brad, are you with us?
I sure am. Thank you so much.
Thanks for being on. Take it away.
Alrighty, thank you so much for the introduction. So, everyone, as you mentioned, I'm Brad Jervis, Senior Cloud Architect for Offsite Data Sync, and we're just going to talk to you a little bit about today and some of the things that we've been doing Offsite Data Sync in Veeam with improving disaster recovery, most notably with the recent update of Veeam Cloud Connect Update 4. So this was just released maybe about a month ago, and there's been a lot of huge features that we're really excited about to offer to our current customers and also hopefully prospective customers, because there's a lot of neat things coming down the pike. So what I want to talk to you a little bit about today, and excuse me if I sound a little bit off today. I'm just recovering from a sickness, so bear with me as we get through this. But I'm just going to talk to you a little bit about what it takes to develop a disaster recovery plan, the benefits of upgrading to the latest version of Veeam Availability Suite, which is going to be Update 4. They just released Update 4A, which is a little bit of bug fixes, but the same features are still going to be there. Some new failover enhancements that comes with this, and then we're going to go over briefly some best practices. Now, we don't have too much time today. I encourage all of you, if you have any more questions about some of the stuff we're going to be covering, to please reach out to us, and we can have a little bit more of a long-form discussion about some of the neat things that we're able to do with this product. So let's talk a little bit about the steps of building a disaster recovery plan. Now, you might be asking yourself, well, why are we talking about this? Well, I think that for building a disaster recovery plan, we not only need to consider the technology that we're going to be able to utilize, but how our business is going to be able to actually utilize that technology. We have all these great features available to us, all these wonderful ways that our users can connect, but if we don't have a grasp on how that's going to work with our organization and with our specific users, we're not going to really be able to do much. We have these wonderful features, but we really need to be able to apply them for our use case. So the first thing first is we need to assess our inventory. We need to start by listing out all of our assets under IT management. This includes all storage, servers, application, all data, anything that's going to be mission critical to our users and what we need to make available in the event of a disaster. So once we have all of that listed, we can go ahead and perform a risk assessment. So this is going to be listing out all of our internal and external threats to our asset inventory. So these threats can include anything from natural disasters, IT failures, maybe compromising of our systems by ransomware, which is kind of the latest hot topic, things of that nature, and kind of say, okay, what are our most important things? Where are they most susceptible to failure? And let's try to address those. And if we can address those, let's say they do get compromised because of some zero-day or something like that, how are we going to recover this? So the next step is going to be defining our recovery objective. So this is where we take our servers and we say, or our servers, our assets, everything else, and we say, okay, my server needs an RTO and an RPO for this amount of time. So for those of you unfamiliar, an RTO is a recovery time objective. And that can basically be described as the amount of time it's going to take for you to recover your environment to where it's fully accessible to your users. So if we go down at noon on Thursday, let's say, my RTO is going to be an hour. I expect all of my services to be up and running, back, ready to roll by 1 p.m. on Thursday. That would be our 1 hour RTO. And our PO is going to be our recovery point objective. So let's say our last backup was maybe done at 8 a.m. on that Thursday, and our PO was 4 hours. Well, if our systems fail or we get compromised or what have you at noon that day, well, then we've just met that 4 hours because we've gone back to that 4-hour time delineation of 8 a.m. on that same day. If we've done it at 12:01, we've missed our 4-hour RPO. So it's important to define these objectives based on business costs, how much money we're losing every minute or every hour that we're down, and from there we can say, okay, well, here's our most critical servers or applications. We want these to be up and running in X amount of time, and we want the data to be no older than X amount of time. And that's going to basically be our RTOs, RPOs. And from here, we can kind of say, okay, well, based on what we've defined, we can say our objective is going to be to get these services up and running as quickly as possible. Maybe we spend a little bit more time and effort on making sure that these critical services have low RTOs and low RPOs. And then some of these archival file servers or whatever it might be, maybe we'll spend a little bit less time on. Maybe they're fine with being down for 24 hours or having an RPO of 24 hours because it's all just archival files. it always is going to depend on your business, and that's kind of one of the most key parts of defining this disaster recovery plan is it's always going to be different depending on your environment, on your CEOs, on your CTOs, whatever the decisions might come down the pike. So the next step is going to be choosing the right tools. We've defined our assets, we've defined our RTOs, RPOs, we've defined the threats. So what are the tools that are going to be available to us that are going to be able to say, okay, well, let's say we have our critical servers, and we have this database server, and frankly, after 20 minutes, this database server is effectively useless to us. So in that case, our RPO is going to be 20 minutes. Well, then we need to find a tool that's going to be able to make sure that that SQL server's data is replicated somewhere off-site every 20 minutes, otherwise it's going to be useless. So here was where we can define, okay, maybe for the SQL server we're going to use this really, really fast tool, what have you, and then again for our archival file server of 24 hours, that's fine, we'll just send it up once every 24 hours. Once we've gone through and analyzed everything in our environment, chosen the right tools that meet our RTOs, RPOs, the last and final thing, which frankly a lot of folks will often overlook, much to my dismay, is going to be to test and practice your DR plan. So I've seen many, many times folks will get disaster recovery up and running. They'll say, okay, wonderful, we've tested it, it's working, and then a year will go by, 2 years, 3 years, and DR plans are no longer tested. Everything is written from a perspective of 3 years ago, and I'm sure all of us in IT, we know that 3 years is almost a lifetime, and many things change. New servers get spun up, servers get decommissioned, applications are decommissioned, new applications are spun up. So it's very, very critical to test and practice your DR plan regularly. At Offsite Data Sync, we recommend at the very least once a year, and that's at the very least. Some folks in our organization actually like to preach the 3-month goal, even though for a lot of IT organizations, we understand a lot of you folks are busy. It's not always going to be feasible to do that, but once a year is kind of the bare minimum. And obviously, whenever you implement a new system or a new application that's critical to your business, we always recommend you do a cursory DR test after that fact to make sure that it's going to work with your strategy. So just really quick, we're going to talk a little bit about how we work with Veeam to provide off-site protection. As you can see, this is kind of a multi-tenant model. All of our various customers connect through the WAN using SSL encryption into our cloud environment, either backup data or replicate data. Everything is 100% completely secure end-to-end. Backup customers have the ability to back up that data and encrypt it as well, so it's encrypted at rest. And replication customers, you can go ahead and isolate everything by network isolation utilizing VLANs or VXLANs is the kind of new feature that we're going to be talking about here very shortly, which is effectively an overlay of VLANs. But that's going to provide network security to isolate you from any other tenants that might exist on the same infrastructure. So let's talk a little bit about how Veeam 9.4, or 9.5 Update 4 rather, improves disaster recovery, because there's a lot to offer here. So first and foremost, there's this new functionality called the cloud tier. Now this allows you to take your data and back it up directly into object-based storage. And Offsite Data Sync, we offer our own cloud tier, which is S3 compatible storage that you can back up to. So some of the cool things is that you can do instant VM recovery directly into the cloud tier, and then once that VM is recovered, you can actually vMotion it back down into your environment. Now, this is all well and good, and we've seen some great results from this. However, just as an aside, if you have something that has a large amount of IOP requirements, things like that, I wouldn't expect to get the same performance that I would locally utilizing an instant VM recovery to the cloud tier. So this isn't going to be a 100% foolproof, this is my disaster recovery solution, but for a lot of folks, this is going to be a great way to get things up and running while that data is coming back into your environment to at least provide some sort of ability for your users to connect and do some work while we're waiting for that. You can, of course, do entire computer and disk level restores, file level, item level restores, and you can even do direct restore to Amazon EC2, Azure, and, of course, Offsite Data Sync. So this is something that's really cool, is the new vCloud Director integration that comes with Veeam Cloud Connect as a result of 9.5 Update 4. So for those of you unfamiliar, vCloud Director is effectively an abstraction of resources from vCenter that provides you the ability to manage your environment from a web-based portal in a multi-tenancy environment. Now, I know I just said a lot of big words there, but what that means is you can manage your VMs that get spun up in disaster recovery entirely from your own portal. You can change everything as far as hardware on the VMs. You can add, remove networks. You have your full ability to control your own firewall and router, so you can do fun things like BGP, MPLS. You can do SSL VPN connections, IPsec VPN connections, everything coming from NAT and firewall rules, east-west firewall rules. Everything that you can do with a standard, typical, firewall, you can do with the vCloud Director integration, and that's a huge step up from where we used to be with regular old vCloud Connect. Now, regular old vCloud Connect worked wonderfully, but we had a lot of customers who would say to me, Brad, listen, I know this works well, we can spin up our VMs, we can access them, but we really need these additional features to make it as easy as possible to access this data for our users. And this is why Veeam said, okay, well, let's integrate with the platform that's already been in development for, I want to say over, I believe, 8 years now, that's going to be able to provide all these wonderful enhancements to our product. So a wonderful new thing is that there's an HTML5 interface on top of this, so you don't have to worry about that lovely little Flash interface we're all so familiar with VMware. You get native cloud resource allocation, so all of that is pre-provisioned for you when you sign up. And you can easily view your replicas and workloads in the DR environment. So some of the cool enhancements that you can do with the failover is we're going to support the VM remote console. So previously there wasn't a great way for you to go in, and if your VM for whatever reason didn't boot, maybe it's one of those little press enter to boot the VM kind of things that we've all seen a few times. You have full access to that console with full virtual keyboard and mouse control, just like you would on a regular vSphere environment. So if you do have one of those issues, you can just log in and take a look and then hit enter and get it to boot yourself or troubleshoot whatever it might be to get that VM to boot. You have IPsec and SSL VPN connectivity into the DR environment, and this is all fully configurable by you, the user. You have enhanced firewall supporting, again, east-west traffic rules. So if you have a DMZ and you want to restrict certain traffic from entering or leaving that DMZ, that's fully supported. And you can also do, adjust those resources while the VM is in DR. Well, maybe, the VM isn't working as well as you expected, or maybe because we're in DR, we're getting a lot more traffic or a lot more resource allocation to a single VM. You have the full ability to go in and say, okay, well, this VM is getting hit pretty hard. Let me bump up the RAM a little bit. Let me add a few CPUs just to make sure that it's able to handle everything. So we're going to briefly talk about best practices, and I hate to stop talking about the wonderful integrations with vCloud Director, but we don't have too much time available to us today, so we're kind of speeding things along. But if you're curious about what that looks like or anything else, please reach out to our sales team. We have a lot of demos and everything available. We'd be more than happy to touch base with you and let you know exactly what it's going to look like and what a lot of these other new features that are coming are. But let's just briefly talk about best practices. So we're going to talk about having full copies of data outside of our production region. So what does that mean? Well, let's say we have a regional disaster. Maybe you're in Southern California or Middle California, San Francisco Bay Area, and you have an earthquake or something. Well, even if your data's off-site, if it's still in the Bay Area, you're still going to be affected by that earthquake. So let's say our DR environment is in Berkeley and our main office is in San Francisco. Well, if San Francisco goes down and Berkeley goes down, well, then that DR environment isn't really going to be too useful for us. So maybe we want to think about putting that data in Las Vegas. Maybe we want to think about putting that data in Michigan, or maybe even on the East Coast. It always depends. But the idea is that if there's a regional problem, we don't want our industry or our organization to be affected by that. We want to be able to withstand those regional difficulties. Another thing is to always make sure that you keep your DR plan up to date to reflect any production changes. Now, I mentioned that anytime you add an application or replace an application, decommission something, you should always rerun the DR task. But it comes along in the same thing to make sure that you update your DR plan, because you may run this DR test and say, okay, everything works well, but if you don't update that DR plan, there's a chance that maybe you as the primary disaster recovery engineer or IT manager, or whatever your position is, maybe you're on vacation somewhere, maybe you're sipping a Mai Tai on the beach somewhere and people are trying to reach you and your phone's somewhere in the hotel room and you're not even worried about it. You're just enjoying the sun and everything. Well, if that DR plan isn't up to date, well, then you're going to have to go back to the hotel room and find a heck of a lot of emails and folks to respond to. It's in your best interest to make sure that that plan is up to date to reflect any production changes so that if there is an event of a disaster, that not even you, but anyone on your team is able to pull up that document and say, okay, here's how we run this DR plan, here's how we get everything up and running, and here's some of the problems that we've encountered that we need to fix manually in order to get everything up and running. Whether that's Active Directory or Exchange or what have you, everything should be listed in perfect order as far as here's how we get things perfect so our users are able to access it and we're able to continue work and we're not losing any more money. Again, we want to also test this plan in a realistic way. I've had a lot of folks come to me and say, well, I only want to test this server because it's really all I care about. I don't need Active Directory. I don't need all these other services. It's really only this server. And then after you ask them a little bit about their environment, they say, well, yeah, that server is joined Active Directory, so I guess we'd need Active Directory up. Okay, yeah, let's test Active Directory, and oh yeah, I guess this application is backed by a SQL server, so maybe we should test that as well, and all these other things that might come up, and dependencies and everything else. So it's critical, I think, to be able to test your plan in a fully comprehensive way to make sure that you're not missing anything. It is all well and good to say, okay, well maybe I only need this file server up and running, and we test that and it works well. Okay, great, that's working. But there's a lot of underlying dependencies that we may not be considering that we might want to take a look at and just make sure that our DR test is going to fully cover in the event that we actually might need to use it. We're only doing ourselves a disservice by not looking at every possible avenue. And the other item is leverage virtualization. There are a lot of great disaster recovery products out there that we support and utilize that manage and handle physical servers, but frankly, at the moment, virtualization is the best way to manage disaster recovery. It's very easy, as a lot of you folks might know, to take a VM from one environment, move it over to another, power it on, and there's very minimal changes that need to occur. When we're talking about physical servers, we're talking about driver injection. We're talking about any number of problems that might go along with that, including potentially failed hard drives or corrupted file systems, things of that nature, things that typically don't plague virtual machines too much. So leverage virtualization as much as you can. Obviously, there are still some applications that do require physical server workloads to be able to run, and there's a lot of products out there that fully support it, but for those of you who are still running physical machines, whether it be Exchange or file servers or what have you, I'd really say look into virtualization, especially if disaster recovery is going to be on your bucket list for 2019, 2020. All right. So one thing that Veeam has really been pushing over the past few years is the 3-2-1 rule, and I'm sure for those of you who are familiar with Veeam, this has been kind of drilled into your head so many times. I'm not going to go too over this because it is kind of at this point just common sense, but you want to keep 3 copies of your data on 2 different types of media and ideally 1 copy off-site. This is just kind of best practices to ensure that our data is going to be available to us and that despite maybe, one type of media failing or, 2 copies of our data is compromised, maybe one of them is off-site, that we always have a backup option for our backup option to make sure that that data is going to be available to us. Alrighty, so finally, you might be asking Offsite Data Sync, who are you guys? Why should I choose you? Well, here's just a few credentials that we have. We're a trusted Veeam partner, 2 times Partner of the Year, recognized for outstanding growth and performance. We're experienced, one of the largest Veeam cloud and service providers. Forgive me, folks. Okay, well, it doesn't want to go back. That's okay. I'll just keep going then from off the top of my head. So we're one of the most trusted Veeam cloud and service providers. We've spent years in this industry, and we have experts on staff with basically any kind of certification that you can imagine. Our primary focus is in the disaster recovery environment, so we have a lot of VMware certifications, Microsoft certifications, obviously Veeam certifications, as that's one of our core product offerings, hotline, and as soon as you call in, our staff is woken up from wherever they may be and kicked off into gear, and we're able to reignite that disaster recovery plan. Now, a few other cool things that we do is we actually take those disaster recovery plans and we store them on our side. So again, let's use our example of maybe you're the IT manager, maybe you have that disaster recovery plan stored locally, but you also have it stored on your own personal laptop, and you're the IT manager and you're down somewhere in Maui or wherever it might be, and you're unavailable. Well, if that local environment is, maybe unavailable for whatever reason, we don't have a copy of that disaster recovery plan. So if one of your, employees calls in and says, hey, we're under a disaster right now, we don't know what to do, we can just log into our system, pull that up, and we have that disaster recovery plan fully documented that says, okay, well, here's the boot order of your servers, here's what we need to get up and running first and foremost. Oh, this application doesn't like when it comes up in an unusual environment. You have to run this command in order to get it up and running smoothly. Whatever it might be, we have that all covered for you. So this is kind of a backup of your disaster recovery plan that we have hosted for you. So you don't really have to worry about making sure that that disaster recovery plan is saved somewhere that all your employees have access to. Obviously, that's a good idea anyway, but as a fallback, offsite data sync, we have that available for you. So thank you so much, everyone, for the webinar. Hopefully I didn't go too much over time here, and I think from here we'll just open it up to a Q&A.
Brad, are you there?
I sure am.
I'm sorry, I was on mute. I popped up a poll question here for the audience, and let's just leave that up while we do some Q&A here. So let's see, first question is about hypervisor support. They're asking what hypervisors you support, and does that include Nutanix AHV?
Perfect question. So Nutanix AHV is kind of a newer one for us just because of the limited market share. We do support it, and we're in the process of kind of going through and developing the best strategy for it. However, we do support it for DR, and yes, it is 100% supported through Veeam. So just letting you know, it is kind of a newer one, though, so some of the other hypervisors like Hyper-V and VMware are a little bit more, I would say, aged correctly, but Nutanix is definitely on the docket, and we have an entire team dedicated to getting Nutanix up and running and kind of to meet the same requirements as those other hypervisors. Now, that being said, we do have a few Nutanix customers. We've done some wonderful testing with them, and everything does work well, but for some of the more complex Nutanix environments, there might be a few little things to work through the weeds.
Got it. Okay. Let's see, next question is, how does it work, the relationship between you and Veeam? Does someone buy Veeam through you directly, or do they bring their own licenses? How does that work?
Great question. So it can work one of two ways. Either you come to us and you already have your Veeam license, and that's all well and good, and you just want to use our services, perfectly acceptable. Or if you're a new customer, you can actually come to us and say, hey, we want to, go through you guys, but we also don't have Veeam, so you can actually rent Veeam licenses through us, and we can provide all of that to you as well. So it's whatever's going to be the best fit for the company, we can provide.
Okay. And then, let's see, next question here about where are your data centers? What can you tell us about that?
Great question. So we have quite a few of them. Our primary data center is going to be in Las Vegas, Nevada. We also have a data center in Grand Rapids, Michigan, Cleveland, Ohio, Canton, Ohio, Rochester, New York, Singapore, and Amsterdam, with a few more coming down the pike that I am not at liberty to speak about so far, but we do have a few more in the EMEA and Europe regions that we're going to be spinning up here shortly.
Okay. And what's the process if someone was interested in, getting started or kind of doing a POC? Can you kind of walk us through that?
Yeah, great question. So you'd reach out to our sales team and say, hey, I'm interested. We do offer trials of all of our solutions. For some of the more complex ones, a POC that might involve a fair amount of networking work on our side, we might say, okay, well, if you have all these requirements of connecting to all these other sites or what have you to test functionality, maybe there might be some individual costs associated with that. But for a basic POC of being able to either back up or replicate your data, make sure it's available, things of that nature, you just reach out to our sales team, express interest in our platform, and they'll be able to help you out with that trial or POC, whatever it might be.
Okay. All right. Very nice. Well, great presentation. I think that's all the questions we have right now. There are a couple more technical questions I'm going to assign to you there in the queue. But thank you so much for being on the event today.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
For more information, of course, check out the handout that's available for download right there in your audience console on the offsite data sync and Veeam solution. It covers all their disaster recovery as a service offerings and it has more details, so make sure you check that out. All right, we are back, and it's time to introduce our next presenter. I'm excited to introduce Mr. Shay Verma. He is the Director of Product Marketing at Druva. Shay, are you with us?
Hi there, yes.
Thanks for being on. Good to have you. Take it away.
All right, thank you so much. Just to introduce myself real quick and to talk a little bit more about the topic, we are going to be discussing for a few minutes on disaster recovery in the cloud. It's been identified, the public cloud, to be a key use case for disaster recovery. Lots of organizations are looking to automate their DR processes, eliminate any associated complexities when talking about disaster recovery. Because if you look at what's happening around the world, it's no longer a question of if, but a question of when a disaster may strike. And as a result, organizations are looking to overcome the traditional challenges that they face when incorporating DR strategies, be it cost, complexity, downtime, you name it. And so today I would like to just spend a few minutes in discussing how Druva can potentially help you with some of those strategies as well. Quick thing about myself, Director of Product Marketing here at Druva. I've been here for about 5 years. I've been leading a lot of the go-to-market initiatives around software and hardware. So I am pretty familiar with the backup recovery, archival, disaster recovery space as well. Having said that, if you look at the traditional challenges that organizations face, they are leveraging some sort of replication-based disaster recovery service, which essentially means you either have to have a replication site that now has to have backup servers, replication software and hardware, dedupe appliances if you want to make sure things are minimally using your storage. It becomes overall a very, very cost-prohibitive, complex initiative that organizations are now trying to shy away from, especially when you keep the cloud in mind. The cloud has provided lots of avenues now to solve lots of the challenges, data challenges, or even anything that has to do with applications from the scale perspective, from a cost perspective, from a complexity perspective. At the end of the day, organizations today, prior to the cloud era for disaster recovery, are really left with two options. Have a DR site that can help you with disaster recovery capabilities, or look towards a vendor that could potentially provide you some managed services with some automatic runbook execution capabilities as well. This model in itself results in lots of redundancies, not only in extra copies of data, but also hardware and software licenses that you may have to pay for. And at the end of the day, really lacks the agility and scale that organizations are looking for when they are trying to grow, especially across the world with a global footprint. This doesn't take into any of the into account robo sites, or remote offices, back offices, essentially. And so every time you have a remote office, you now have to find a way to replicate the data or replicate your hardware. Essentially, it becomes a very big hodgepodge of hardware and software that is very cost prohibitive and complex. Newer mechanisms of data protection are now touting for a DR in a cloud solution. Essentially, what they're trying to do is retrofit for the cloud, provide you with a software that you will have to manage at the end of the day, you will have to patch at the end of the day, and at the end of the day, you are stuck with on-premises hardware, you're stuck with software in the cloud that you now have to manage. These services, while have proven to become a little bit more efficient than the pre-cloud era days of asynchronous and synchronous replication or mirroring capabilities, it still is inefficient at the end of the day. It is still cost prohibitive. You still have to manage your hybrid infrastructure, be it on-premises or in the cloud. There's no global deduplication capabilities, or if so, it's very minimal. And at the end of the day, you're still paying for storage on-premises and storage in the cloud. And because it's not globally deduped, there's still extra copies of data that you now have to manage as well. And at the end of the day, with so many moving parts in your hybrid posture, there could be risk to data loss as well. And the other thing that we've seen organizations do is that while you are managing a lot of this, you're trying to create a VM in the cloud or leverage the cloud, for example, where you know how to convert the VM into a particular image, say an AMI, Amazon machine image, that you could use to leverage to boot up EC2 instances. That in itself is a very time-cumbersome process, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in the next few slides as well. That at the end of the day could really result in not meeting RTOs or RPOs depending upon where that conversion happens. And when you think you were actually compliant to your business continuity SLAs, because of the conversion process, you really aren't as well compliant. And so that's where Druva comes in. Druva has over 4,000 customers. We have over 100 petabytes of data under management in AWS. And we're also one of AWS's top 5 storage partners. Some of the marquee customers are shown over here. We are a true cloud-native solution. We are not going to give you any hardware. We're not going to give you any software for data protection, backup, recovery, long-term retention, or DR capabilities. It is basically a true service that we provide, where the vision here is, like anytime you go into your house, you turn on a switch, the electricity comes on. You don't really care where the plumbing is happening, where the infrastructure for the generators are. You just expect the water, the taps to be running, and you expect the electricity in the house. The same vision is over here, where you can just come and expect in your data center that there are backups happening automatically. You don't have to overhaul anything. There's no lift and shift. There's no hardware boxes, and there's no software boxes. And so this is what the vision is. And if you look at this slide over here, essentially your footprint of your data center could be on premises. It could be VMware Cloud on AWS, where you are leveraging VMware infrastructure on AWS, or you could have cloud-native applications running in AWS. It really doesn't matter where your application is running. At the end of the day, we will back it up directly to the cloud with a direct-to-cloud model, unify the data in the cloud, and give you full visibility and control of your data, the ability to recover your data or VMs in the cloud at any given point, meeting RTOs of minutes. We don't have any AMI conversions, and I'll talk to a little bit about that a little later. And once it's all in the cloud, you can, of course, recover at any time. If you see in this model, there is no hardware, there is no software, there is no tapes, there's no archiving, there's no offsite requirements of replication-based systems for DR purposes. A very scalable, born in the cloud, SaaS solution that gives you the ability to manage all your workloads, irrespective of where it resides, through a single pane of glass. And so that's really where the vision is. And then also shown over here for your on-premises hardware is an optional cloud cache available. If you have very stringent RTO, RPO requirements for your tier 1 applications, for example, you have a VM that's running and has to be up and running within the hour or so, then you can naturally back up to this particular cloud cache, which is available for free, because you only pay for data stored in the cloud post-global deduplication. And then you can use LAN-like restore speeds to restore any data on premises at your convenience. This cloud cache, however, does synchronize data to the cloud. It is post-global deduplication, so the amount of data that gets transferred over the wire or through the WAN is really, really very minimal in a forever incremental basis. So this provides you with the ability to meet business continuity SLAs of RTOs and RPOs that are very, very minimal. In fact, you can meet recovery speeds of 1 terabyte per hour, for example. It really depends on your LAN speeds over here. Keeping this in mind, one of the things that I want to highlight and that I was trying to allude towards is the fact that we are a true cloud-native architecture that is delivered as a service and on demand. Essentially, we are built on AWS, which with that comes all the microservices and innovations that AWS has to deliver, and we provide backup recovery, long-term retention, and disaster recovery capabilities built on AWS. So if there's any need for on-demand resources, we take care of that for you. You move from a CapEx to an OpEx model. You no longer need to buy into capital. You don't need to buy into hardware, or you don't have any capital expenditures today because you're now paying for data stored in the cloud, post-global deduplication to Druva, essentially paying for all the services that you're utilizing just with Druva. Economies of scale, very scalable and very cost-effective. Naturally, it has a global reach. Wherever AWS has a footprint, you can now leverage our services in those regions, thereby meeting data residency laws. Your data never gets to leave any particular region. If you have those kinds of restrictions, you can naturally take our services over there and turn it on and just start utilizing our services as well. Since this is a as-a-service solution, we will manage all of this for you, and we rather would have you focus on what's actually more important to you versus actually thinking about the backup infrastructure, the backup storage, replication, DR. We take care of all of this for you. And because we were built in the cloud, you now have the speed and agility that organizations are looking for in a more scalable fashion that organizations are expecting from the cloud. So to give you an example here, if you are in the retail industry and you're looking to you're seeing a workload increase during Thanksgiving, and it's huge for you, and you really need the extra capacity, you really need the storage for that. Guess what? With Druva, it is all transparent to you. You can scale as you want immediately, just with a few clicks of buttons, and you are back up and running immediately. This is a little bit more about our architecture. I don't want to go into too much details of it, but at the end of the day, this highlights that we have no hardware and we have no software to give you. It's as a service. You can pick up the phone, start up a trial immediately, a free trial, and you can get started within minutes versus calling any backup and recovery or DR vendor, and that would get you started up in a few weeks. They will first have to ship you some sort of bricks or some sort of appliances. None of that happens. It doesn't matter where your application is, shown in the left box. It could be in the cloud or it could be on premises. We'll back that up directly to the cloud, and we auto-tier data in the cloud where we use S3, S3IA, storage, Glacier, and you can now have that ability to keep that in the cloud forever, for as long as you need it for compliance reasons. So if you are looking for, say you're in the healthcare business and you want, for HIPAA reasons, that your data needs to be available for 7 years, you can archive that data. We do auto-tiering capabilities. We separate the metadata from the data, which gives you an extra layer of obfuscation. Of course, from a security perspective, there are a few things that we do where data is always encrypted in flight, data is encrypted in storage, and of course we use envelope encryption, which gives you the ability and the comfort that no one has access to your data. Druva, in fact, at any given point, has no access to customer data at any given point. So if the government ever comes and say that, hey, you are a backup provider for a particular organization, can you give us their data? The answer is no, because the way we encrypt the data and the way we store keys in the cloud, we only have access to the token, which is encrypted keys, and we cannot unencrypt those keys, which only happens with the credentials of the customer, which the customer knows. So at the end of the day, we have no access to customer data. Now, once the data has been unified in the cloud, you can now leverage that single golden copy to do whatever you need. You can either restore it. You have granular capabilities as well, file level restore, VM level restore. It really doesn't matter. Disk level restore, you can do a lot of that. And then you can also boot up EC2 instances in the cloud or bring up your recovered VMs in the cloud in the event of a disaster, which is shown in the right bottom corner box as well. What we do here is we will leverage what we call a DR proxy that we will provide, which is a lightweight proxy that sits in your environment, in your customer VPC, which is a natural extension of your data center, and we create EBS snapshots from your VM images, and that is stored at the ready for any organization at the time of disaster. With a single click, you can now boot up volumes and boot up EC2 instances from that to recover in the event of a disaster. This helps in meeting RTOs of minutes. You can come up immediately in the cloud, and you can be back up and running within minutes. Our RTOs are minutes, and our RPOs that we support are of the hour over here. To give you a little bit more of color of our DR solution, it's a single pane of glass to manage all your backup recovery needs, your DR recovery needs, and of course your long-term retention recovery needs as well. We meet an RPO of an hour, RTO of minutes, and with a single click of button after the configuration has been done, you can either fail over or fail back, depending upon what you're looking to do. You can test this automatically as many number of times you want to meet your DR compliance requirements. We have automated DR runbook execution capabilities where you can now bring up recovered VMs in any particular order. You have the ability to run scripts after a particular VM, or you have the ability to inject some sort of delays. All of those capabilities are defined in the runbook, and we automate that runbook execution at the time of a disaster when required. This is all done in the customer's VPC, so naturally we don't have any access to the customer data. We do not want to compromise the security posture of the customer, so it's all done within the customer's VPC. Once you are up and running in the cloud, once you recover that, you also still want to protect those instances against any DR-like, disaster-like situations, like a del star dot star or a server going down, or heck, even a region going down. So we now also have capabilities of cloning your VPC across your region and across a particular account within AWS. We not only make sure that we clone the environment, all your network settings and all that is as well cloned. So therefore, we automate that whole process and make sure that if your VM that was on premises, you have the ability to boot that up in the cloud, or if you are just talking about some EC2 instances or RDS instances in the cloud, we can also provide DR capabilities around that in the cloud. At the end of the day, your application, your instance is always protected, and you have the ability to bring it up wherever you want across the AWS footprint, across any region, across any account, and you have the ability to fail back on premises, or in fact VMware Cloud on AWS as well. It really doesn't matter where you recover those particular instances. All right, so you have full automation capabilities, runbook execution capabilities into it, and then you also have the ability to track and monitor the failback and failover recoveries that is going on in your system. You get to know which servers are coming up, where exactly are you running it. Again, you can test this as many number of times that you want at additional no charges for that. And so this really makes it a fully automated process, thereby eliminating any need for any DR sites, any replication sites, any DR managed services. We are literally making DR capabilities available to any organization that was shying away from a DR strategy for any type of workload due to cost, due to complexity, or due to downtime. We want to make sure that it is now available for every application that we are actually supporting. In terms of deduplication and in terms of cost, the way our services work, you will pay for data stored in the cloud post-global deduplication. Naturally, we want to make sure that your storage footprint is minimized, and as a result, we want to ensure that the only single copy of your data is actually stored in the cloud. So we leverage global deduplication, and at the end of the day, you only pay for the data stored in the cloud. Gives you a perfect utilization model. You don't have to worry about underutilization or overutilization, and we help organizations as a result save significant costs, up to 60%, when it comes to backup and recovery, because there is no hardware. We globally deduplicate your data, and you're not stuck in any contracts that make you buy or procure hardware ahead of time, because you only pay for data as you go. An example of our customer here is GameStop. They were spread around 14 countries with 7,200 stores. They had a lot of data silos, a lot of data to back up and protect. With Druva, we were able to reduce their footprint of storage. We were able to enable DR for them, provide RTO capabilities with Cloud Cache that their requirements were, and at the end of the day, we were able to reduce their storage by 3.4x and lower their operating costs by 70%. That's all I had for today. I know it was very quick, so if there are any questions, feel free to reach out to us on our website or call us directly. We have free trials available. You can test drive this solution for your organization and see if it fits for you, and we'll be happy to take it from there. All right, back to you, Chief.
Thanks, Jay. Great presentation, as usual. Let's see, we do have some questions here for you. First one is about AMI conversion or AMI conversion, depending how you pronounce it. When protecting a VM, do I need to convert a virtual machine since I'm storing it in AWS?
Actually, you know what? I did allude to this, and I did say DR in the cloud works is organizations or competitive solutions would take your VM and convert that into an AMI. Now, typically, an AMI is used for booting EC2 instances in the cloud. Now, one of the issues that we've seen with this is that the AMI conversion can take up to hours for a mid-sized VM, and for a very large VM, say 2 terabytes, it can take even up to a day. We've even seen larger VMs take up to 2 to 3 days. Now, that conversion process can start to infringe upon any RTO or RPO requirements depending upon when that conversion is invoked. With Druva, we have completely walked away from a conversion process. We leverage EBS snapshots, and we keep these EBS snapshots ready in your account for a disaster, for the time of a disaster. So with a single click of a button, you can now start booting up EC2 instances, and so we can help meet those business continuity SLAs because we don't have any of those AMI conversion processes that could take a long time.
Very nice, very nice. I want to call the attention to the slides window for the audience out there. There's a poll question up. If you don't mind answering that, it says, what additional information would you like about the Druva solution? Next question that came in, do I need an account for AWS when using Druva?
So because this is a as-a-service solution, if you're not familiar with AWS, for backup and recovery, we take care of everything for you. You don't have to worry about it. During a POC, we'll set it up for you, and your data is backed up to an AWS session. You only interface with Druva. Now, when it comes to DR in the cloud, because of the security posture, we don't have access to any of your customer data. So we don't want to bring up EC2 instances in our cloud. Those EC2 instances, our cloud over here is AWS VPC. Those EC2 instances are brought up in your VPC, which is a natural extension of your data center. In that event, you will need to have an AWS account, correct?
Okay, got it. And then what's it take to try this out? Like, is there a demo, or how does that work?
Lots of demos available on our website, lots of information, technical documents available. You want to have a free trial, we can provide that as well. Happy to get on a call. You can contact our sales. We're spread all over the world. We have a large footprint geographically. So really, it's left up to you how you prefer the mode of communication can be.
Okay. And this question just came in. Do you all support VMware Cloud on AWS?
We do. I didn't get a chance to talk about the overall solution in details. We support on-premises. We support VMware Cloud on AWS. We support any cloud-native application on AWS. We're all in with AWS from that perspective.
Okay. Excellent. Excellent. Well, I think that's all the time we have for questions. But great presentation. Thanks for being on, Shay.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Bye.
For more information on Druva, of course, visit their website, druva.com. Also, check out the handout that's available right there for download in your audience console. That handout is a report from 451 Research about how Druva is turning up the heat in the DRaaS market with new enterprise features. And now it's time to give away a Tango $500 gift card. The next gift card winner today is Joseph Vittorelli from North Carolina. Congratulations, Joseph, from North Carolina. We have one more $500 gift card to give out after our next presentation. And now it's time for our next presenter on today's DRaaS, or Disaster Recovery in the Cloud EcoCast. That is Adam Margett. who is a technical lead generation specialist at Unitrends. Adam, are you with us?
Good afternoon, David. We are here.
Awesome. Thanks for being on. Take it away.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And folks, good afternoon to everyone. Again, yes, my name is Adam Margette. I'm a technical solutions lead gen specialist here with Unitrends. Wear a number of hats, but let's jump right in. I don't want to keep everyone from the next $500 giveaway, so we're going to get right started. Just a quick look at what we're hoping to cover today. A little bit of an introduction for those of you out there that maybe haven't heard of Unitrends before. Who are we? What do we do? We'll take a quick look at some industry trends and where really our focus here is on protecting some of those cloud-based workloads, taking a look at some of the different workloads that require protection because our strategies may differ depending on where our data is living. Taking a look at SaaS applications versus infrastructure as a service, some of the different options that we have, exploring purpose-built versus public clouds, the Unitrends cloud in specifics, and certainly the Unitrends disaster recovery as a service. So without further ado, let's jump right in here. And if you haven't heard of Unitrends, we've been around for a while, laser focused on the backup and disaster recovery space since 1989 upon our inception as PhD Virtual. Over the last 30 years, the company has evolved significantly, and we've got over 30,000 Unitrends customers across the globe protecting all in over 2 exabytes of data. And when you look at the Unitrends cloud, the pinpoints on the map here kind of give you a rough idea of where the Unitrends data centers are located. We have over 100 petabytes of customer data that we are managing in the Unitrends cloud. We maintain a 98% customer satisfaction rating. I think that that's a huge testament to our R&D and support folks, all U.S.-based 24/7. And again, that 98% is a rolling metric, not a statistic that we cherry-picked from our best month last year. And recovery assurance, I think really the big differentiator for Unitrends, we'll touch on a little bit, and what that looks like for folks is really, I think, our bread and butter. And as far as Unitrends, on behalf of our customers, we're running over 12,000 of those tests for our customers per quarter. And we'll, again, touch on recovery assurance a little bit later on as we move through the presentation here. But really, why are we here and what brings us to the table? It's Unitrends' goal, our mission, to provide the highest levels of data protection and provide that proof and confidence that you can beat any outage. Organizations, as they're increasingly monetizing and assigning value to their data, know that downtime and interruption is significant and proves significant risks. And whether it's, a local outage where we have to recover a file or a folder or a virtual machine, spin up a new application that's crashed, or even cover the entire site, that downtime figure in a lot of cases I think is startling. And it's really, again, our goal to provide a full suite or platform for that business continuity, again, so that we can proactively anticipate and resolve any potential outages. But that being said, a lot of organizations are starting to move into the cloud. And when AWS debuted in 2006, I think there was a lot of fog and a lot of mysticism. And now that that's been lifted, we see a lot of folks are going mainstream with cloud computing. From a poll from IDG that was published last year, 96% of organizations are using the cloud in one way or another, through SaaS applications, again, infrastructure as a service. But a significantly fewer amount of those, about 81%, have a defined multi-cloud strategy in place. So when it comes to protecting these workloads, when we take a look at the shared responsibility model that we have with a number of those cloud providers, what is our, really what's our strategy, or how is the business making sure that they have the right protection components in place for the intellectual property that they have in the cloud? I think in some of what's really driving adoption here, again, looking back to, even 2016, even a few years ago, Unitrends conducts a survey of about 1,000 or so IT professionals in our community every year, and we've seen that the concerns around data privacy, that loss of control, are really starting to diminish, and more so now concerns around cost, and certainly, when's the right time for our organization to move to the cloud? If we do choose to move to a cloud provider, are we going to get the support that we need? Questions that we see frequently, and I think that you'll see when we dive into the Unitrends offering what those kind of look like and how we make things very, very easy to digest here. But, that concern around cost is one of the most commonly cited reasons that we see today as far as why folks aren't yet adopting the cloud. But with that, and for the folks that have or that are considering moving to a multi-cloud strategy, it is a challenge, and it's not without potential pitfalls. Again, one protection solution that you're using for data or workloads locally may not work for workloads that are in AWS or Microsoft Azure. It may not be the same that you need to protect Office 365 or your Salesforce.com data. In part of Unitrend's solution as well, we're an all-in-one vendor with those public cloud integrations with our private or manufacturer's cloud that is operated and managed by us. But again, it's a single platform, and it's all tied into a single support call. So as folks are building out their infrastructure to really strive for that business continuity, that resilient IT posture, with Unitrends, you're able to reduce that finger pointing. When we have a local issue or even an off-site recovery issue and we can't get the restore to work, the hardware vendor's pointing fingers at the software vendor who's pointing fingers at the cloud vendor. And how do you resolve that? With Unitrends, it's not the case. Your local backup, off-site recovery, long-term retention and management, and even that disaster recovery as a service, that DRaaS, is under a single vendor and all backed by a single support organization. Now let's take a look at SaaS application models, and this is a chart from Microsoft. And if you've gone through and read all of their agreements, I know that I've signed my life away and not read the iOS terms when you get 65 pages there every time you upgrade. But there is responsibility on behalf of the end users. The cloud provider is delivering some level of infrastructure, be it the infrastructure, the platform, or the application. But again, the users that are up there, the administration, and ultimately the data, the intellectual property, is still the responsibility of the organization. So while Microsoft has these phenomenal redundant data centers, things like human error, programmatic error, malicious insiders, hackers, we've even seen instances of ransomware being written to go after Office 365 data anywhere where they think that they can really impact the business and demand and eat those bitcoins out of you. They're looking for avenues to attack that. So with Unitrends, we're able to fill in some of the gaps around that long-term retention and recoverability. And I don't want folks to confuse this with legal hold, where that's really more designed so for lawyers. Recovery process there is not self-service. It's not going to particularly time effective, and for that we do have a solution. So Unitrends Spanning is a cloud-to-cloud backup service for the Office 365, G Suite, and Salesforce platforms. It enables our customers or our end users with granular recovery of files, folders, contacts, their SharePoint, their OneDrive. You get infinite retention. So where Microsoft's retention policies will give you anywhere from 14 to 30 days of retention, with Spanning, your backups are held in perpetuity forever, and they're not being deleted. You have unlimited storage, so as backups continue to accumulate, you're not increasing your costs. We're only interested in the per-user count. Very, very straightforward licensing model. But again, you've got some really nice functionality for non-destructive restores, cross-user restores. We can automate the backup processes. You can run on-demand backups as well. So a lot of granularity control in a very easy-to-use interface. And because it's a cloud-to-cloud service, we're not taking data or bringing it down locally. It's SOC 2 Type 2 compliant. Again, we're meeting a number of the major compliances that folks are being asked to adhere to here with that Spanning backup service. So we kind of consider that shared responsibility model. How are we safeguarding the data that our users are putting up in those SaaS applications? And when we look at protecting public clouds, it's going to be a similar model, and you can go right on to the AWS website, and they will break down for you exactly what they're responsible from hardware, infrastructure, redundancy, but they will tell you the users, the data, in some cases the applications, are responsible of the organization. So we have that shared responsibility model. Additionally, we can leverage Unitrends and get the production data that we have in AWS or Microsoft Azure into the Unitrends cloud for that white glove disaster recovery as a service, rather than you having to go in and define the networking configurations, the boot order, etc. You have an onboarded kit with Unitrends, so if there is a cloud level incident, we're able to fail over to the Unitrends cloud and maintain those operations. So with Unitrends, there are 4 real key use cases for the integrations that we have with AWS and Azure. Certainly we can help from a cloud migration standpoint, moving workloads into AWS and Azure, be it temporarily in the event of a site outage, or the ability to move and deploy into ECS or Azure Compute and leave the workloads there. No need to copy those back. Certainly, again, disaster recovery from cloud-level incidents by leveraging a multi-cloud strategy with the Unitrends Forever Cloud and that white glove service. the ability to offload or write our backup copies to the cloud providers for that long-term retention, and the ability to back up those cloud workloads natively by deploying Unitrends right through the AWS or the Azure marketplaces. So Unitrends can be deployed as a virtual appliance within AWS or Microsoft Azure, and we can leverage this to protect workloads, replicate data to other regions or, again, other clouds. So, for example, you can move those workloads to the Unitrends cloud for disaster recovery in the event of a cloud-level failure. Now, there's some great functionality that's built into the Unitrends appliance, the ability to automate bulk operations and streamline your backups with our SLA policies where we're grouping backups based on a recovery point objective, ransomware detection, just one example of our built-in analytics engine where we're monitoring and understanding the behavior of your machines, calling out great spikes in change rates, entropy, the randomness of the data. And again, you can deploy that software locally to protect those local machines, but also within AWS or Azure right from their marketplace to protect those cloud-based workloads. But a tool that I love, and when we talk about migration and disaster recovery, is the Unitrends Boomerang tool. This is a neat little tool, and it has 4 real key functions for you here. The first, we're going to be pairing a local vCenter VM. So for VMware, we pair those vCenter VMs, and we group them into what we call protection groups. And then you're able to pair those protection groups with a bucket path to AWS or S3, Amazon S3. From there, you have the ability to replicate, just move those at the block level, move those blocks into either the Azure Blob or the S3 environment for that long-term retention. Now, from there, you can also deploy those workloads into, say, EC2 or Azure Compute, and the Boomerang tool is going to automate that conversion process into the native cloud format. So it's a one-click deploy process, and we handle all of the conversions for you. Alternatively, we can restore those blocks back to the local vCenter. Again, if the cloud is not a permanent instance for you, we can restore those blocks to the local vCenter and spin those up again for you. And the copy back function allows us for the reverse migration of virtual machines that are running in production and migrating those back down to the local vCenter. Again, all of the conversions is automated. And so with Boomerang, first when you replicate or are looking to restore those blocks, we have a technology here that's called Pilot Lite, and that not only handles the conversion, say, for example, into the AMI format, but it's able to store these blocks in low-cost compute. So we're not leveraging the compute cloud when we first replicate. We want to keep those costs down. There will be some storage and some small data transfer fees through to through the replication process, but only incurring those charges for production should we choose to deploy and leverage EC2 workloads. So with that Boomerang tool, again, we're able to automate the export of cloud-based workloads to production to the local vCenter in a single operational step. I think a really, really cool use case and a neat little piece of technology kind of complementing our core solution. So when we look at how Boomerang works, again, we're going to install Boomerang as a virtual machine within that local vCenter. Again, we're going to group VMs that we want into protection groups, and we'll take the snapshots of the VMDKs, import that data and that configuration into S3 where we're maintaining it with no compute costs being incurred. Now, should, again, you need to deploy those into production, we're able to handle that conversion for you natively and then migrate those workloads into EC2 or, again, the Azure Compute Cloud. So some neat functionality around some different migration and disaster recovery tools that we have to help facilitate the movement from those local workloads into the public cloud. But we also want to explore purpose-built versus public clouds. And I was taking a look the other day at what AWS calls their quote-unquote simple cloud cost calculator. And as I was going through, first, you have to define the specific cloud you're looking at your use case for, whether it's EC2, S3, SQS, Snowball, etc. And when you go into the calculator, just to get an idea of what my monthly costs would be, there are 8 or so fields and a number of different considerations per field, the retrieval amount, the life cycle, the percentage of storage that's not being accessed. And while it was a simple calculator, their quote-unquote simple calculator, thought it was awfully complex just to kind of understand, what may occur, and we can't anticipate necessarily what we may need. When you look at something like the Unitrends cloud, you have that seamless integration between the local backup and the cloud. And again, we're purpose-built for two things, that long-term retention and management of your data and that disaster recovery as a service. When we break down or take a look at kind of how Unitrends Cloud is licensed, you'll find that it's very, very simple and easy to digest. And I think that for a lot of folks, what's driving adoption with us is the predictability of those costs and the ability to start small with us and grow and evolve as the requirements of the business change. And specifically, when we mentioned, disaster recovery into the AWS cloud, where you're responsible for the boot order, the networking configuration, the failover process, why disaster recovery as a service? Certainly a shorter downtime. Unitrends will offer as short as a guaranteed 1 hour recovery time objective, and that's an SLA, a contractual SLA with fiscal penalty to us if we're not able to meet it, again, for those real mission critical workloads. You won't get an SLA from Amazon or Azure because you're doing the work on your own. It's a full service offering. We'll take a look at kind of what that means, what does that entail, but also the ability to leverage the cloud for testing, DevOps, and ultimately, again, in the event of that site-wide failure, it's your business insurance. For example, we have a customer safety products, a case study that's available on our website, and they needed to keep manufacturing lines open when Hurricane Irma was getting close to making landfall. So they chose to invest with Unitrends, protection locally with our software, replication to the cloud, and that disaster recovery as a service. So about 5 days before landfall, they opted to declare a disaster and spin up operations in our cloud. Now, we handle that spin up, again, the network configuration, the boot order, the testing has already been performed. The customer's been onboarded, so once they're spun up in the Unitrends cloud, they're rerouting their user traffic through an SSL VPN and able to resume production without risking employee safety by having them out in the storm if potentially that office or that local site is damaged. Folks are remote. They're in places that they are safe, but they can still keep elements of the business moving forward. They're not at risk or really facing that loss of downtime by leveraging something like SpinUp into the Unitrends cloud. And when we think about, too, the cost of a Unitrends cloud versus, some of the different costs that go into calculating disaster recovery in the Azure and the AWS cloud, you're looking at, retrieval fees, storage fees, access fees, ingress, egress. So just an example up here on the chart of the predictability of the Unitrends model. We're not interested in how many times you need to access it per year. With our disaster recovery as a service, you get 30 days of runtime by default with your contract. So as you're consuming compute resources or you're retrieving data, it really starts to add up with some of those other providers. And for us, what drives a lot of that adoption is the consistency and the predictability of the cost model. So let's take a look at what that looks like with Unitrends. And so we license things out very, very straightforward. And the first thing we're interested in is how much data do you need to protect with Unitrends. You're selecting, in 500 gigabyte increments, how much we need to protect. And for example, you're not locked into a certain amount based on what you have locally. For example, you're backing up 10 terabytes locally, but only a terabyte or two has been designated for that archive or that long-term retention. Start off by licensing out 2 terabytes. You don't have to send the full volume up there. Again, flexibility and granularity as you start to move in or invest with the Unitrends cloud. And then after we've defined the amount of data that we need to replicate, what's the retention period? How long do you need to keep it for? And we've got a number of options, again, as kind of listening to our user community and seeing what they were looking for in regards to the compliance requirements or some of the agreements that they have with their business units, 90-day retention window, years 1 through 7, and then even beyond 7, forever retention, infinite retention. And on top of that, you have the ability to add that disaster recovery as a service. Again, that white glove spin up and failover for your environment. There are a number of configuration options that are available. So again, flexibility in determining, what's the right model for us in terms of feature, function, or recovery SLA versus cost for the business. And certainly we do have the only 1-hour SLA in the industry that's going to be contractually guaranteed, that being a 1-hour SLA that we're frequently testing against. So when you look at some of the DRaaS product offerings, again, there are 3 flavors here. And the first is that standard disaster recovery as a service. It's a best effort SLA. But again, from that replicated volume, any machine that you have replicated to the Unitrends cloud is eligible for spin-up. The onboarding, that same, prep kit, boot order, networking, and so forth has already been predefined. We're giving you the disaster recovery template. We're going to run that onboarding tests for you, and you'll see that you've got a machine on reserve for you, about 8 CPUs and 8 gigs of RAM for that standard DRaaS. But for more aggressive recovery time objectives, we have elite and premium offerings, and these are going to be a per machine basis. So for specific machines or applications or VMs, you can tag those with either elite or premium DRaaS, depending on what's the right SLA for the business units. You will also note on the max machine size, a little bit more robust of a machine is on reserve for you. With that elite DRaaS, you're getting 8 CPU and 16 gigs of RAM. With the premium DRaaS, 24 CPU and 128 gigs of RAM. And again, I'd give you a demo of the Unitrends DRaaS, but it would be me calling our 800 support number and declaring a disaster. Very, very straightforward here, and it's all hands off. Again, designed when we think that there's a site-wide outage or something that's really impacting the business, we want to make some of that process knowing what goes into trying to get things online and making sure that the local folks are following their portions of the disaster recovery plan, not just for the IT but for the business as a whole. We want to take some of that off of your shoulders, and certainly with recovery assurance, this is application and recovery time, recovery point objective testing. So we're able to benchmark in a sandbox environment and make sure that as we're taking backups, we're able to meet the objectives that have been defined by your organization. So again, that performance SLA I think is absolutely mission critical, where you've got a contracted agreement, and again, with Unitrends, if we're not able to meet that, there's fiscal penalty to us. There's recourse for our customers. Now, we haven't missed an SLA. If everyone that was a Unitrends customer was declaring a disaster at once, we're probably facing more like a global apocalypse. But kind of tongue-in-cheek, that SLA, I think, is, again, some of that peace of mind in knowing that, okay, Unitrends has tested these machines. We have that guarantee that we'll be up in less than an hour, and a lot of times significantly shorter than an hour, kind of depending on the machine or the application that we're looking to bring up. And the recovery testing is automated and built in as part of the service for you. There's no more running failover on the weekends, wondering, are my backups good? Kind of removing that Schrodinger's backup from the equation here. We think that it should be included with no extra charge. AWS and Azure aren't going to automate that testing for you, but Unitrends will. And again, you can run these reports locally from your UI, but if you're subscribed to Premium or Elite DRaaS, we'll be running a certain number of these tests. Today, our customers are leveraging, Unitrends, our cloud customers are running over 12,000 recovery assurance tests per quarter. I think I just stole my thunder from the next slide here, but we send you these formal reports. Similarly, you can export them right from your dashboard into a CSV, PDF, so that if you're boss, president of the organization, CIO, whoever is saying, well, hey, if X machine goes down, it's our most important business critical application, what does recovery look like? There's no guesswork and there's no extra burden of time on you to have to go in and determine that. We're able to automate that process for you. And this is just a little screenshot of what it looks like from our UI. Again, you can see where in a sandbox environment we're going to spin up the machines for you and test against those compliance, the recovery point, recovery time objective benchmarks, the machines that are meeting those, certainly be notified of any failures. Do we need to increase the frequency or the different modes in which we're backing up to meet those objectives? And we'll work with you on how to achieve those. And then benchmarking application level tests. That, I think, is the big difference, and what I really love and what folks say, when they come over to Unitrends, really sets us apart from what they were using in the past. We have preloaded over 50 application-specific tests that you can run. You can also write your own custom scripts through PowerShell tools, scan drives and folders for malware and so forth, so that there's great visibility into what's going on with your backups. We want to, backup, probably not the most fun. It is that business insurance. Everyone needs it. But what information can we glean from our backups that we hadn't, necessarily before? And I think that being able to automate some of this testing is giving folks the proof and the confidence that they need to be able to respond, in the recovery point to come. So again, as I mentioned, in the Unitrends cloud, our customers are running with us over 12,000 of these tests, per quarter. And this is what it looks like, just a great screenshot from our UI of what the specific test looks like. Again, we're leveraging instant recovery, in which Unitrends will leverage storage, vMotion, or live migration. We'll mount the VMDK to the Unitrends appliance temporarily. We contact the primary or the new host for restore, spin up that guest, and then migrate the storage to the target data store in the background. So that's how we're benchmarking the recovery time objective. Instant recovery is the same technology you can use locally that we're using in our cloud to spin up machines with a very, very short recovery time objective. And then from there, in our test, we're able to define the boot order here, and then we see where one of the application level tests failed. So again, if we're looking to check against SQL instance status, run a query, run Windows Services tests for NTDS, IIS, whatever that might be, you're able to see and get error messages, descriptions of where things went wrong, so we can take steps to remediate, make sure that we're not in a situation where we try to restore from that backup and the underlying database, the application is corrupted and the backup is no good. We want to remove that Schrodinger's backup from the equation here. And I had also mentioned kind of what goes into that onboarding. And I don't want to read the whole slide for you. I know that there's a lot here, and it looks like the presentation will be going out to folks. You can certainly find this information in the DRaaS FAQ on unitrends.com. But when we say white glove service, we truly mean it, and it's all on us. We're helping you through the onboarding with the prep kit, identifying, again, those systems that we're protecting. We're monitoring the replication to the Unitrends cloud, the networking, the boot order, the tests that we're running are all predefined by you as we start to orchestrate and get you spun up in our cloud. We have what we call the Unitrends Rapid Seed, so we will ship you, for fast upload to our cloud, we'll ship you a NAS device. You preload it with all of your backups, you ship it to us so that we're not having to transmit hundreds of gigs or even terabytes over the WAN. We want to be able to get up in our cloud and operational very, very, very quickly. So that initial seeding, we have some assistance for that as well. And certainly, again, the ongoing testing of those backups through that recovery assurance process. So when we look at what the disaster looks like here, you have your users and that network traffic is being routed to the local site. But when the local site goes down and the end user declares a disaster, organization is not operational. We make that phone call to Unitrends and you declare that disaster, we need spin up. Unitrends will spin up that DR site. We provide you with an SSL VPN so that we can reroute that user traffic to the machines now that we have running in our cloud. And we'll continue to take backups so that we can track any of the changes while you're running your applications with us here. So when the local site is ready to be rebuilt, that disaster has gone away, you've worked with your IT provider to get server, networking, storage, etc. back into place, we're ready to fail back. We will seed all of your backups onto a brand new appliance, or if you're a software customer with us, onto a NAS device and ship those to your local site overnight, so that we can start to rebuild and begin that local recovery process. From there, we're going to notify Unitrends that we're ready to fail back. We're going to tear down the DR site, again, send those last changes, ship those to your site as well. Again, minimal data transfer over the wire here, again, for that speed and recovery. And then you're ready to restore the data to the appliance, restore those operations, and lastly, we sync that data back up, we bring the systems online, we update that networking configuration, we reroute your traffic to the local site, and then in the conclusion of that disaster, we're going to send a new prep kit to our customers, capture any changes for that future failover. Make sure that we're synced up with where you are from when you were running in our cloud to where we're ready to restore and resume those operations back at the local site. So with Unitrends, it's a unified and all-in-one solution, again, for your local backup, off-site recovery, long-term retention data management, disaster recovery as a service. There's no finger pointing. The hardware vendor is not pointing fingers at the software vendor because it's just us. It's all Unitrends, and again, we do have that public cloud integration for AWS, Microsoft, Azure. It's a single phone call to our US-based support group, 24/7 by 365. And again, the ability to automate that recovery testing, anticipate potential roadblocks in advance. The ransomware detection that we have built into our software, again, trying to get ahead and identify potential issues, potential outages for our customers so that we can remediate those and maintain uptime as we realize it's so critical to the business. So in concluding here, our sales group did ask me to share with everyone on the line a couple of promotions that we are running right now based on the Unitrends Cloud and that disaster recovery as a service. So with the Unitrends Cloud, for all volumes and retention periods, with a purchase of a 3-year subscription, the first 6 months are on us. For our disaster recovery as a service, again, all levels of DRaaS, standard, elite, and premium. With a 3-year subscription, the first year is on us, and with a 5-year subscription, the first 2 years are on us. And again, all levels and retention periods there. So with that, I thank you. Again, a couple of promotions just to keep an eye on while we're still running those, probably for the first half of the year here. We'll see how things go. But at this time, I will turn it back over to David to see if there are any questions on the line. Again, my name is Adam with Unitrends. I would encourage anyone looking for a little bit more information to check out our website, www.unitrends.com. If you go to /events, unitrends.com/events, you'll see a number of virtual and in-market events, public demonstrations, if you'd like to take a look at kind of what that local interface looks like and how it ties into some of those cloud solutions. I know that cloud and DRaaS was more so the focus today, but I think that we've got a phenomenal offering for that local backup to help kind of start orchestrating these processes as well.
Great presentation, Adam. Let's see, we do have some questions here for you from the audience. First, before I do that, I'm going to pop up this poll question. The question on your screen out there is, what additional information would you like to learn about the Unitrends solution? It's a multi-select question. I'll just leave that up while we do some Q&A here. So first question is, what can you tell us about the Unitrends data centers? Where are they located?
So we have multiple data centers throughout the globe. We do have 3 here in the U.S. for geo-redundancy, but also locations in Canada, the U.K., Germany, and even a data center in Australia. And these are owned and operated by Unitrends. They are not a subset or a region of AWS or Azure. It's our own hardware, our own staff, our own security that are in these data centers. And they do meet the major compliancy standards, SSAE 16, SOC 2, Type 2, HIPAA, GDPR, and so forth.
Okay, nice. And there's some questions here about Boomerang. How is it licensed, and how do you install it?
Boomerang is licensed on a per VM basis, and it's installed as a virtual machine right on your local vCenter. From there, it will auto-inventory all of the VMs within vCenter, and you can group those into protection groups and pair them with an existing bucket path. So you will need an active AWS or Azure account, but once you pair them with a bucket path, you are ready to replicate, deploy, restore, and or copy back.
Okay, nice. And what hypervisors does Boomerang support?
Boomerang right now only supports VMware.
Okay. Another question here, Kenneth is asking, can a customer require data to be stored in country due to government laws?
Absolutely, and we see it a lot, especially in the U.S., Canada as well. Upon request, and there's a great FAQ on our website as well, we will not replicate data outside the country of origin.
Okay. And how does someone choose between, I know you all have a virtual edition and a appliance edition. How does someone choose between those two when protecting their data on site?
So I think that in a lot of cases, it's going to be, again, what's the right blend of feature, function, cost, and my current environment? The Recovery Series is an all-in-one self-contained unit, so that is going to be preloaded with the backup software, the compute memory and storage needed for the backup environment, and kicking off any recovery processes. But conversely, if the organization has adequate server and storage resources, they can deploy the virtual appliance, and that's going to be licensed out on a per machine or per VM socket basis. So the hardware is capacity-based. We have 15 models that scale from 2 to 120 terabytes of usable capacity. They are fully stackable, or on a per resource basis, you could deploy the virtual appliance. It'll really, again, depend on kind of cost and what's the right kind of feature function for your environment. What's that right balance for you?
Okay, nice. And the spanning Office 365 protection solution you talked about, is it true that you can use that, regardless of whether or not you're using, say, Unitrends for data protection?
Yes, that's correct. Spanning is licensed independently, and it is a cloud-to-cloud backup service, so we're not pulling any data outside of the Azure clouds. We're not bringing anything down locally. When you install Spanning as a service, you will identify with your credentials, the tenant, and then it will start to inventory and identify all of the active users on the tenant. From there, you can opt users in and out to backup, but yes, you can run Spanning standalone without Unitrends running locally.
Okay, all right. Well, very nice. I think that's all the questions we have right now, but great presentation, Adam.
Excellent. Thank you so much, David. It was a pleasure being with you.
All right. Thank you, Unitrends, for supporting today's event. For more information, visit unitrends.com. Also, check out the handout that's available for download right there in your audience console. They have a number of free trials, as Adam mentioned, across all their different product lines. So thank you again, Unitrends, and thank you everyone who answered this poll question that's right there on the screen. Now, before we go, we have one more prize giveaway on today's event. That is for another Tango $500 gift card, and it's going out to Kevin Kingser from Georgia. Congratulations, Kevin from Georgia. Thank you, everyone who joined today's event. If you didn't win, we have a lot more gift cards and prizes that we give away on other upcoming events. I'll show you where to go and register for those here in just a moment. Before I do that, I want to mention, again, the 10 on Tech podcast that you can subscribe to over in the iTunes store. We do interviews of enterprise technology innovators on that. It's a great listen and a quick show to learn about what's going on in the industry. If you are a potential sponsor of a future MegaCast or EcoCast event, feel free to connect with us at our email address, connect@actualtechmedia.com, to learn about sponsorship opportunities. And you can visit events.actualtechmedia.com to register for all of our upcoming MegaCast, EcoCast, Summit events, and webinars that we do on a weekly basis. So make sure you visit that site and register for all the events that you would like. In fact, our next event is next week. It's the Cloud Solutions MegaCast. So make sure that you visit events.actualtechmedia.com to register for that, or watch your email inbox for an invitation. And with that, we've reached the conclusion of today's event. I hope that you enjoyed the event and learned a lot about disaster recovery in the cloud on today's EcoCast. Have a great day.